He had a special talent for handling swords. There was nothing he couldn't do or learn with his blade, and nothing that could escape his blade. The man worked so hard that there were permanent red stains on his hand. After dropping out of school, he spent 20 years perfecting his knife techniques. He improved so much that he became the best swordsman in his country. And so he became an excellent sushi chef, and we see him serving in a restaurant. People are impressed by his skills, and he seems successful at work. Suddenly, a customer hears a noise coming from the kitchen. The other cooks working with him also notice the loud noise. The protagonist doesn't seem to notice the noise, being too focused on his work. One of his co-workers kindly informs him that it's his phone alarm ringing. Removing his earphones and noticing the noise, he remembers he should have set it to vibrate. The protagonist receives a notification from a game he had previously deleted. The expert swordsman wonders if, by any chance, his phone is broken. A head chef comes to inform our protagonist of a guest waiting for him. The chef asks his co-worker to tell the guest he isn't present today. The guest quickly realizes it's an obvious lie. A fat man in a suit asks Mr. Kim, the cook, to give him an answer. He says it shouldn't be a difficult request for someone who uses knives all day and has had time to think. He corrects himself, saying he was being insensitive, and asks his men to show him the suitcase. The chubby man says he would never disappoint him and asks for the requester's sincerity. With a wide grin, the man offers a payment of $300 million in advance. However, he must complete the task correctly. Without responding to the chubby man, the chef, with a scary gaze, makes precise cuts on a fish. Kim says cleanliness is essential in this kitchen, leaving the chubby man in shock at the scene. As Kim says this, he observes the mobster with an intimidating, piercing look. He concludes by saying this kitchen is no place for someone as dirty as him. As the fish pieces fall to the ground, he tells the man to leave the premises. Laughing, the chubby man says someone like him shouldn't be working in a place like this. The fat man tells him to give up, and quickly, in response, Kim places his hand on his knife. The henchman and the fat man are startled by the swordsman's action and step back in fear. Leaving the kitchen, the fat man says he won't give up and assures them he'll be back soon. He orders his men to leave with him while Kim acts as if nothing happened. Night then falls, darkening the sky over the area. A head chef asks why he refused the payment, and Kim says he has no experience as a criminal. His friend tells him to use his swordsman reputation to earn easy money without killing anyone. The friend tells him to live like a human too, and Kim says he'd refuse even if they offered billions. The bald man asks what the notifications on Kim's phone are, and he says they're from a game. His friend asks if the game is Divine Protection, and he confirms that it is. The restaurant's head chef appears and orders them to clean the kitchen. His coworker says he'll be back while Kim finishes his cigarette outside. Kim remembers when his entire family passed away and he had to work non-stop. He thinks about his friend's advice to live like a human and realizes he only thought about making money. Irritated, he wonders why his phone keeps ringing with notifications from the game. Taking the phone out of his pocket, he comments that this has gone too far. Kim thinks he must have reinstalled the game while drunk and says he needs to uninstall it again. The protagonist jokes, laughing that the demons in the game have been invading the academy for years. He then clicks on the game notification that mentions the demons invading the academy. The master swordsman, frustrated, says he accidentally clicked on the Divine Protection ad. Opening the app, he sees a message prompting him to tap the screen to start the game. Even though he hasn't played in a long time, the nostalgic soundtrack remains the same. Kim notices that the female characters are still as beautiful as they were when used to play. Suddenly, the app starts to glitch, and he wonders if it's some kind of lag. Out of nowhere, his phone begins to emit an intense light that shocks Kim. His bald coworker appears and says the restaurant owner is calling him. His coworker notices his phone lying on the floor and wonders where Kim went. The coworker questions why Kim left his phone on the ground at the back of the restaurant. The owner asks where Kim is, and the coworker says he went to the bathroom. The owner tells him to hurry back. On the phone screen, a message appears saying the transfer was completed. There's not much to say about the game. One of the restaurant employees is about to click on the phone's screen. The game Divine Protection is a pay-to-win model with an automatic hunting system and standard features. People consider it just another generic mobile game with no further explanations. On the game menu screen, there's a message indicating to tap the screen to start. And even so, our protagonist Kim wonders why he plays this game. He then concludes that he was interested in the female characters in the game. And suddenly, he found himself consumed by the game and, ironically enough, spent a lot of money on it. Even after playing several times, he's neither an NPC nor a playable character. Someone clicks on the name of a character in the game. Kim reveals that he is now an unknown character and bites the game's arrow. He possessed this unknown background character in the game. In this world, his name is Kang Geomma, and he has an extremely ordinary appearance. Suddenly, a woman with extravagant blue hair bumps into him. He is startled and turns toward the woman with wide eyes. Kim says he understands what people might think of him as a pervert. However, that's not the case. Kang asks if the girl is okay, and she replies that she is. Then our protagonist explains that the setting of Divine Protection takes place in Korea. This includes the locations and the names given to things, which we can see in the subway he takes. There are some differences among the characters, and through them, he managed to adapt. In this way, Kang lived for a year, forgetting whether it was just a game or reality. A life he couldn't enjoy in his previous life as a restaurant chef. until that fateful day came for him. He arrives home and says he's back to the people who live with him. The people comment that they are happy he's home and call him the Sword Master. His father shows him an acceptance letter to a school for sword masters. Kang says they send it to the wrong address, but his parents say they're proud of him. His parents tell him that tomorrow is the entrance ceremony and ask if he has everything ready. Geomma says he'll prepare quickly, and they urge him to get things ready. At that moment, his modest dream of living a normal life went down the drain. He says that with everyone so happy, he can't refuse to go to the school the next day. Geomma asked several times if he could skip it, but it made no difference. Our hero comments that he's so tired of all this. He gets irritated with the former Geomma and the fact that he was accepted into such a prestigious school. Our protagonist then remembers how things unfolded in Kang's life. His parents told him that his divine power manifested and he took the entrance exam that day. Before Kim possessed him, Kang had manifested his divine power and entered Draken Academy. Our protagonist stares at the acceptance letter in shock, wondering if Kang is a genius. Divine power is a special ability that humans can use like a game skill. However, not all humans can use this special ability. Divine power manifests through genetics based on the presence or absence of this gene. Society is divided into 3 segments that separate the commoners, the poor, and the privileged. Draken Academy is an institution created to maintain power within the elite class. However, Draken Academy was created under the pretext of cultivating heroes, but long ago it became a school only for high-class families. Recently, an admission system was created for non-heroic families known as special admissions, and he, Geomma, was admitted as one of these special students. As he wonders why heroes are necessary, he knows the reason is obvious. The reason is the existence of the Demon King and his army of demons. Our protagonist reiterates again that this is not reality. He comments that it's a school of heroes preparing them for war. He feels as if he's about to rejoin it. Sitting in his chair, deep in thought, our hero begins to reflect on divine power. A status window explains that his power reduces pain for 30 seconds and recharges in 12 hours. Kim decides to read about the divine power Kang unlocked and realizes it's a pain reduction ability. Our hero becomes depressed upon seeing that he transmigrated with this ability that lasts only 30 seconds. He comments that this is the divine power he acquired when he possessed Kang's body. It is called the Blessing of the Sword God. The Blessing of the Sword God makes him cut if he's cut, but requires using a small weapon. This divine power, our protagonist says, is something he never encountered during his years playing the game. The elaborate name of the ability contrasts with its simple effect. Cutting after getting cut is an extremely obvious trait to call a divine power. However, what truly stands out is the activation condition of this divine power. The sword must be less than 30 centimeters long and less than 5 centimeters wide, which is clearly the size of a sushi knife. Our protagonist wonders if they're insinuating he should cut sashimi. Geomma becomes frustrated and starts grumbling, saying he doesn't know what to do. He gets frustrated because life doesn't always go the way people wish. Slouched in his chair, tired, he wonders if he's already packed everything to go to the academy. Our swordsman then remembers that he forgot his equipment. Thinking about it now, Kim recalls the weapon he used when playing the game before. In this game, even the weakest equipment costs tens of millions of won. A rank and S-rank items are true treasures in the game Divine Protection. The tuition fee is already exorbitant and Kang doesn't want to spend on something he's being forced to do. The admission letter says required equipment, but he considers not bringing anything to leave a bad impression. Geomma yawns, appearing tired. He gets up and starts walking toward a blinding blue light. He remembers his first master who only used a sashimi knife that cost 100 million. Smiling, our protagonist comments that suddenly he's thinking of that old man again. Kim knows that a true master doesn't blame their equipment. Suddenly, he arrives at Draken Academy and the instructor calls out to his students. We see Geomma in a fancy outfit carrying his backpack. His mohawked instructor asks him angrily if that's really his weapon. Our protagonist shows a Daikso knife set and claims these are his weapons. During the equipment inspection at the entrance ceremony, the academy instructor is left speechless. Every year, senior students play pranks, so discipline must be established from the start. Slamming his hand on the desk, angry, the instructor asks Kang if he thinks the academy is a joke. The instructor asks if he thinks it's reasonable to use a kitchen knife as a weapon for the class test. Geomma boldly responds that he thinks Draken Academy is a joke. The Draken Academy instructor stares at Kang in disbelief at what he just heard. The mohawked man shouts at the student Geomma, overcome with rage. Calmly, Kang explains that his family is middle class and the additional cost of weapons would be excessive. The instructor notices the color of the tag on Kang's blazer, indicating he is a special admission student. The mohawked man agrees that for modest families, the academy's tuition is a heavy burden. The instructor is shocked by the prejudice against a child in a school that claims to promote equal education. The man wonders what a 30% discount even means in this academy. Geomma says that blaming the equipment is something only amateurs do. The Draken Academy instructor is stunned by the special student's sharp response. Our protagonist recalls his old master saying about not blaming one's equipment. It's known that this is not something a young person should say, making it seem like he's mastered certain fields. Struck by the weight of Geomma's eloquent words, the instructor is taken aback. Crying after hearing such a beautiful statement, the mohawked man calls the student the greatest of all. The Jokin Academy instructor approves the use of the special student Kang Geomma's weapons. Collecting his weapon kit, the protagonist thanks the instructor and proceeds to enter the academy. The other students in line wonder how a special admission student got into the academy. With prejudice, the students comment on the foul smell of those who entered through special admission. Ordering everyone to be quiet, the instructor says that once the evaluation is over, they should leave. The mohawked man declares that, depending on the student's actions, he'll either be an angel or a demon. Arriving in front of the academy and standing outside, our hero decides to take a break. Our protagonist expected this pressure, but experiencing it firsthand is truly unsettling. Either way, he survived the inspection and the entrance ceremony, with only the placement exam remaining. Placing his hand on his face, Kang reflects on the next steps. However, it finally sinks in that he has actually made it this far. Seeing the enormous and monumental Hero Academy, he comments that he will attend it for 3 years. Looking at it in person, Kang notes that it is definitely different from the graphics he saw before. Up close, it looks as large as a small city. Kang smiles as he observes his grand and gigantic new school. Attending an elite school after dropping out of high school on Earth due to financial issues is unbelievable. A notice about the placement exam is given, stating that students must attend at 1 p.m. Kang Geomma listens to all of this while sitting on a park bench, unbothered. Kang gathers his things and says the placement exam is more important than the entrance exam. With his kitchen knife in hand, he says he'll need to familiarize himself with it during the exams. Our hero begins to reflect on the fact that he hasn't used a knife since arriving here. He recalls his old master telling him to never let go of his knife and even to sleep with it. Kang wonders if, after 20 years of using knives, 1 year of pause would make him rusty. The protagonist examines the knife, running his fingers along its handle to check its condition. With a subtle movement of his fingers, he unsheathes the knife with ease and speed. A light smile crosses his face as he comments that the knife is in better shape than he thought. Holding it in his hand and unsheathed, he assumes he could cut 1 or 2 leaves with it. At the moment he fully unsheathes it, the knife begins to radiate magical energy. He realizes that the activation conditions have been met, and the blessing of the sword god is triggered. However, a system warning in the game indicates that Kang Geomma's body level is too low. Frozen with the knife in his hand, another warning appears, stating that his weapon's level is also too low. Suppression is used to initiate synchronization between the weapon and the user's blessing. The swordsman hero is shocked to see that just unsheathing the knife activated the blessing. Suddenly, the game's system announces that synchronization has been completed, and a large notification wishes that the blessings of the gods be with Kang Geomma. Our protagonist is stunned by the news, his eyes wide in disbelief. The lightning from the blessing of the sword god is intense, and he can barely hold the weapon. Kang Geomma, in pain, says that if this continues, it might cost him his life. His wide eyes reflect the extreme pain piercing through his body. Loud crashes and lightning strike his body, almost making him collapse. However, the reality surrounding the swordsman begins to shatter like broken glass. Floating in an empty space, disconnected from the fragmented reality, the protagonist is left in shock. Holding the knife in his hand, our protagonist questions what just happened. He ends up dropping his kitchen knife onto the ground of this empty and fragmented space. At that moment, the walls around him shatter even more, like a breaking mirror. Kang Geomma, our protagonist, widens his eyes as he witnesses something astonishing. Scared and breaking into a cold sweat, he realizes that upon letting go of the knife, he returned to normal reality. Suddenly, he feels an intense pain, clutching his head while gritting his teeth. He understands the part about the divine power being activated, but cannot grasp the world's collapse. He also comments that this adverse reaction is causing him immense pain, and he knows that his divine power, which reduces pain, only works for mild muscle aches. Seeing his hands trembling and feeling excruciating pain, our hero realizes that if this happens every time he uses the ability, he won't be able to use it. The speakers announce again for students to meet in the training hall. Looking at his kitchen knife lying on the ground, Kang wonders if he should pick it up again. He considers that maybe it won't hurt the next time and knows he can't leave the knife on the ground. Trembling, frightened, and crouching toward the ground to retrieve the knife, he tries to calm himself. The protagonist then firmly grips the knife by the handle, and nothing seems to happen. However, within moments, blue lightning engulfs his body and he begins to scream. Suddenly, we see all the students gathered in the massive training hall, resembling a coliseum. Several students in their uniforms seem confident about facing the tests. The city's aristocrats discuss the cost of their children's admission to the academy. A chubby man with a green bowl haircut comments on a man who endured a very difficult journey. He says this to Mr. Clinge, the 7-star hero, sitting on his throne. A descendant of Aaron Nibelung and a direct disciple of Valor Draken, the academy's founder. The aristocrats comment that Clinge Seafried is the strongest human in the world. As they talk, the wealthy decide to return to their seats to watch the ceremony. Mr. Clinge closes his eyes and then reopens them with intensity as he sees someone arriving. The 7-star heroine Media appears and comments that it's been a long time since she's seen Clinge. The headmaster of Jokin Academy doesn't seem very pleased to see media after half a century. He comments that, judging by media's clothes, it seems 70 years haven't changed her. The heroine responds that every woman wants to feel beautiful until the day she dies. Media says her blessing can make Siegfried appear 10 years younger through her powers. He replies that even at 70 years old, she hasn't matured and should value her inner nature. Laughing, Media wonders how he's still the same old man he was 50 years ago. However, she adds that the inflexible old man has changed and even brought her to places like this. She says she hated even breathing the same air as these selfish bastards. She supposes that Klinge, Siegfried's granddaughter, must be very beautiful. The headmaster of Jokin Academy doesn't respond and maintains his rigid silence. He then comments that it seems the ceremony will begin in the training hall. The upper-class students greet each other before the exam starts and appear to challenge one another. In the midst of this crowd of elite students laughing stands Kang Geomma, still and lost. Our hero wonders if he's the only one with black hair among all of them. Moreover, he's a student who entered Jokin Academy through special admission. The other elitist students display prejudice toward the student admitted under special circumstances. Hearing all the prejudiced comments directed at him and his origins, Kang becomes serious. Pushing through the students and creating space among them, someone approaches the hall. Kang Geomma, our swordsman, is surprised by the arrival of this unexpected person. All the students are shocked to see the stunning beauty of the girl with blue hair. After the initial surprise, our protagonist suppresses his reaction and becomes serious again. Abel von Nibelung, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, appears in the training hall. Our protagonist recognizes the girl as the main character of the game Divine Protection, and the reason why he spent a fortune on that game. The ancestral hero Valor Dwalken created the subspace alongside the establishment of his academy. The subspace is a separate reality where the damage and pain felt there are real. However, this pain and damage do not translate into the real world. Since there's no real-world intervention in the game, eliminations are ignored and allowed. Media wants to break away from the tradition of subspace battles and implement a battle royale this year. In this format, students are divided into groups of 10, and the winner is the one who survives the longest. Irritated, Klinge comments that it's a survival game and media says there's no equipment limit. Klinge asks, concerned, if this won't turn into a free-for-all for the privileged students. She says she's made several concessions because of this, as the academy is funded by nobility. The heroine says she went through many difficulties just to implement this new combat system. Media mentions to Klinge that the black-haired boy is the special admission student. Meanwhile, Kang Geomma is completely stunned by Abel von Nibelung's beauty. Kang feels sorry for the fools trying to get close to Abel, knowing from playing the game that Abel von Nibelung is a player with the miraculous M blessing. This indicates that she's already tied to the protagonist of Divine Protection. In the end, the protagonist concludes that beautiful people always have someone by their side. Additionally, he knows that special admission students like himself don't fit their level. Thus, he decided not to get involved, avoiding a noisy school life. With a career guide from the academy in hand, he says he's established 3 pillars for his future. These are completing his studies without incidents, securing a conventional job, and living a safe life. The Jokin Academy career guide shows that heroes are the highest paid occupation. He feels like a joke for trembling all over just from holding a knife. Closing the book, our hero decides to look for a more comfortable job in the future. The instructor will explain the rules of the 738th year at Jokin Academy, which is starting. When the protagonist sees a technological object emitting audio, he notices that it is about to begin. It is announced to the students that, unlike previous years, this will be a battle royale. Out of 10 cadets, they will be randomly distributed into the Star class and the Dragon class. The last places among these cadets will be assigned to the Common Players class, and the class assignments will be based on the results of these tests. They are informed that there is no time limit and that the scores will be counted automatically. The protagonist begins to think that this test is exactly like the game. Kang Geomma sets a simple goal: not to waste time and finish this quickly. The device that generates the subspace is activated, and with it, the exam begins at Jokin Academy. The subspace forms around the teams, and they are wished the blessing of the heroes. Our hero enters the subspace serious and confident, though hoping not to have to use his knife. Group 24 has their evaluations completed, and the first place goes to Rakshal. In Group 47, the evaluations end with Saki taking first place and Sarada taking second. Media says that since the old man has his granddaughter in Changson's blood, the results will be significant. She adds that the completion time of 7 minutes and 14 seconds was fast. Media questions how a rank C weapon could achieve this record. The academy director explains that his granddaughter won a fair competition in truth. Meanwhile, Abel von Nibelung curses his grandfather, calling him a grumpy old man. Media says that even though she didn't break the record, she is among the top 10 in the academy's history. The grandfather, director of Jokin Academy, says this is normal for those with Nibelung blood. Saying he will leave since it's over, the grandfather stands up, and media says there's still one group left. And the director of Jokin Academy says they must be pigs, not worth his time. He quickly rises and bids farewell to the heroine, and she says she will see old man in another life. Suddenly, the 2 ancestral heroes stop what they are doing and are completely shocked. All the students at Joaquin Academy stop their activities to stare at something in shock. Media asks the old man if he felt it too, and Nibelung seems unable to believe what he felt. All the competitors in the combat arenas stop what they are doing to observe something. In complete shock, the director realizes that this sensation was felt by everyone in the building. Meanwhile, Media, the heroine, and the old academy director observe in a catatonic state. Suddenly, the two begin staring at a rift in the subspace sky. Realizing something even more shocking, Media cannot contain herself and lets out a piercing scream. Meanwhile, the reality around all the competitors chatters like pieces of glass. The other nobles at the scene look up, observing the rift created in the subspace. Suddenly, two people fall and make a loud impact in the middle of the combat arena. The members of Joaquin Academy incredulously wonder how the people fell from the subspace. Another blinding, shimmering blue flash appears in the sky, illuminating the entire area. The director of Joaquin Academy watches this scene, perplexed and wide-eyed. From the rift that originated the subspace flash to the arena, a knife falls and lands in front of Kang. Media, the heroine, instructs the medical team to check on the cadets who fell from the subspace. She orders the medical team to move quickly while Kang Geomma lies on the ground with his knife. In the reflection of the kitchen knife, we can see our protagonist lying unconscious. The test results are predetermined, and there is no way to avoid them. One of the academy students shouts and says the bastard did well. After saying this, he is grabbed by another person, who strangles him with one hand. The person, wearing a large red glove, slams the competitor's body onto the ground with force. Two enormous men in suits, each wearing a technological glove on one hand, hold the students. Kang Geomma realizes they were ambushed and captured by the Death Squad. The men who defeated the students are the evil twins from the Iron King's family. Mao Jun uses the gigantic robotic glove colored blue. Meanwhile, Mao Shun is the twin wearing the red glove, and the two assault the students. Although both possess great innate talent, their brutal violence knows no bounds. Kang Geomma gets angry seeing them toy with the students for over 30 minutes. Feeling ignored by the two, our protagonist feels extremely weak. Mao Shun asks if the blonde student is already dead and drops his body like a sack of potatoes. The evil twin with the red glove begins counting on his fingers. While the twin tries to talk to Hyung, a student starts writhing and screaming in pain. Mao Jun gets irritated and says they should finish the job and finally eliminates the annoying student with a kick. Mao Shun tells his brother that he captured 4 people, and in response, Jun lets him have what's left. Seeing a red-haired girl curled up and frightened, he says he'll gladly take her. Kang Geomma fills with rage upon seeing them approach a defenseless girl like that. He notices that the girl, who was quiet in the corner, doesn't seem to want to fight due to panic. The two evil twins approach her with slow, heavy steps while she cries. Mao Shun, with a wicked expression, says the girl seems to be his type. Mao Jun, wearing a blue glove, tells the girl to be careful, as his brother is a pervert. Completely malevolent and insane, Shun asks where he should start hurting her. Kang Geomma interrupts this moment, imposing himself and yelling to get their attention. Our hero says that even if it's the subspace, he questions why they are going so far. Shun looks disinterested, while his brother tells him to check the boy's badge. Seeing that he's a special student, they consider him inferior. The Mao Jun and Mao Shun brothers flash a sinister smile at our protagonist. Mao Shun tells his brother Hyung that he will handle the special student. While he wipes the ketchup left on the other student's glove on the ground, he approaches Kang. Mao Jun orders him to rip out the kid's tongue since he decided to insult them. The protagonist wonders what he should do now and if he should activate his resistance skill. He changes his mind upon realizing that hitting the students for 30 minutes and 30 seconds won't work. Suddenly, the hero with the kitchen knife hears a noise and gets startled. Along with the noise, a strong, blinding blue glow comes from his backpack and seems to be his knife. However, Kang Geomma knows that if he holds the knife, he will undoubtedly activate the blessing. He remembers when he held the sashimi knife and activated the blessing of the sword god. He also recalls the 3 commandments he created for peace and safety without incidents. Kang comments that it hasn't even been half a day since he decided to stay out of trouble. The two evil twins wonder what this glow coming from his bag is. Suddenly, Kang Geomma wields his sashimi knife and the glow persists. The evil twins continue staring, trying to understand what's happening. When he raises the kitchen knife to protect the red-haired girl, they ask if this is a joke. Mao Shun says that since he was funny, he will eliminate him quickly and painlessly. Taking an extremely high jump, Mao Shun says he'll just crush his head. Saying he can't be picky in this situation, Kang decides to activate his 30 seconds of protection. Holding the knife and seeing the enemies jump, he activates the 30-second blessing. For 30 seconds, all pain inflicted on him will be nullified with a recharge of 12 hours. At the same time, another blessing is activated, the blessing of the sword god. Thus, the blessing of pain will counteract the pain caused by the blessing of the sword god. Mao Shun, with a wicked expression, asks what he can do with a kitchen knife. Our protagonist knows that if he doesn't cut down the giant man, he will die. However, he knows cutting down this war tank won't be easy. After all, it's not a fish but a person, and he's not used to doing this. Our protagonist wonders why gangsters in movies wield sashimi knives. He questions if it's really possible to cut people with a sashimi knife or only fish. His boss responds, irritated and yelling at Kim that this only happens in movies. And he finishes by saying that even if a god comes, it wouldn't work at all. He remembers his boss's last words telling him he'll only cut if he actually cuts. Returning to reality, Kang Geomma widens his eyes as he sees Mao Shun in front of him. A divine light awakens in our hero in this moment before his demise. Mao Shun comes down with the intention of crushing Kang, who quickly delivers a slash. And unexpectedly and swiftly, he cuts off Mao Shun's arm with a single slash. Our protagonist's eyes shine blue due to the blessing of the Sword God. The blessing of the Sword God stands beside Kang Geomma, who subdues and steps over the twin. He recalls his past life when he asked his boss why gangsters use knives in movies, and his boss's response was to throw a sashimi knife at the wall beside Kim. His boss orders him to call him master and questions why he asked such a question. His first master was a man who had once been part of a gang. As a way to atone for his crimes, he amputated his own hand. After that, he opened a sashimi restaurant to make people happy with his knife skills. And our hero admits that his master's knife skills were truly impressive. He asks his master if gangsters in real life also wielded sashimi knives. His master responds that a sashimi knife is more precise and slices into more pieces. Kim then asks why you can slice fish but not people with such a knife. The master replies that he can slice a fish because it's lying down. Standing up, it wouldn't be possible. Once again, Kim tries calling his master boss and asks about clean cuts. However, his master gets irritated by the way he is addressed and hits his apprentice. Finally, he says that even if the god of knives appeared, it wouldn't be possible to do what he wants. Back in the present, he realizes he made a clean and perfect cut on Mao Shun's arm. Our swordsman hero looks up, unable to believe what he has done. The other twin and the red-haired girl also stare in disbelief at the scene. The giant Mao Shun's body falls to the ground in front of Kang Geomma, who holds the knife. The twin without an arm screams in a shrill and desperate manner because of the sharp pain. He even starts crying from the agony of his severed limb. Clutching the stump that remains, he howls in pain and complains as Kang approaches him. Mao Shun begins to back away, begging Kang not to come closer while crying like a child. He screams for help as he runs away, but Kang Geomma does not stop chasing him. The twin pleads for help from Hyung, who observes everything in shock, speechless. Shun continues to cry and curse at our swordsman hero while running away. With wide and teary eyes, screaming for his brother to help quickly, something happens. Our protagonist delivers a clean, horizontal slash aimed at Mao Shun's head. Mao Jun sees his twin brother die cruelly and unexpectedly before his eyes. He looks at the ground where his twin brother's head has fallen, completely in shock. On the ground, the face of his now-deceased brother stares at his feet and dirties his shoe with blood. Mao Jun screams for his twin brother in complete despair, his voice piercing and frantic. Meanwhile, our swordsman hero stands with his back turned, holding his sashimi knife. Mao Jun tells himself that this place is just an empty space and his brother wasn't truly eliminated. Yet he still wonders what is different about the man and his kitchen knife. Without being sure, he suspects it might be someone wielding a knife for the first time. The twin realizes he is trembling and breathing heavily, wondering if it's just a coincidence. In any case, he knows for sure that he must be careful with that sashimi knife. Holding the robotic glove, Mao Jun imagines that Shun's mistake was due to his carelessness. Mao Jun then puts on his brother's red glove and prepares to use both at the same time. By doing so, the blessing of amplified defense resolution is activated, as both gloves are more effective. Through this, the blessing of intervention increases jump power by 200%, and the blessing of spirit makes punches significantly stronger. Using both gloves simultaneously activates all three blessings at the same time. Mao Jun shouts that these are rank-up blessings that mere commoners could never dream of using. Jun says it doesn't matter where Kang found that knife, it cannot pierce a rank S item. At that moment, Kang Geomma, still with his back turned, counts to 30 and is already at 20. The evil twin, consumed by rage, prepares a powerful punch with his glove intending to eliminate Kang. Asking if Kang is murmuring his last words, Jun charges at him, saying he will crush him. He then adds that his elimination will be quick and painless. Completely ignoring the twin, Kang Geomma reaches the countdown from 6 to 5. A few seconds pass and Mao Jun is completely defeated with multiple knives in his body. And the arm with its red glove is also lying on the ground, amputated. Hyung, the remaining evil twin, is now eliminated, just like his twin brother. Standing before the freshly defeated body of the man, Kang reaches the count of 2 seconds. While holding his blessed knife in his hands, the count reaches 1, and he looks in shock. At the moment the count hits 0, Mao Jun appears completely lifeless. Kang Geomma then receives the notification that the pain resistance blessing has finally ended. While holding his sashimi knife glowing blue, he lets out a loud and piercing scream. Talking about some kind of ghost, he seems to faint right after this exhausting battle. An indefinite amount of time passes and our hero begins to slowly open his eyes. Looking up, the protagonist in a suit sees the ceiling of what appears to be a hospital. Waking up completely dazed, he wonders if this place is the Academy Hospital. When he tries to get up, he feels a sharp pain and groans in discomfort. A blonde man with bowl-cut hair and glasses bursts through the hospital door abruptly. The moment the man with glasses yells that he's awake, Kang Geomma feels confused. 2 other people in elegant attire enter his room at that moment. Our protagonist is startled by the presence of these people in his hospital room. He notices that it's a familiar face, yet one he has never seen before. 50 years ago, a man defeated the commander of the 6th Legion of Demons. He then sees the Academy director walk in and the heroine Media in his room, and he recognizes them as 2 of the 7 stellar heroes that exist in this world. The strongest man in humanity, Siegfried, stares at him with deep, severe eyes. Friendly and wise, the Academy director and heroine Media Poison asks Kang if he's okay. Our swordsman hero is in shock at seeing these 2 people there and feels embarrassed. He wonders why they're there as they both ask his name and he answers. Siegfried, the strongest man and stellar hero, says he'll get straight to the point with Kang Geomma, and he directly and bluntly asks what the boy did in the subspace. Our protagonist remembers that feeling and knows it wasn't his imagination. He knows that at the moment he wielded the sashimi knife with mastery, he was still himself. Snapping out of his thoughts, he looks at the heroes and formulates a response. He then notices Siegfried raising and showing the sheath of his sword, and he knows that nothing good can come from being marked by this monstrous being. Kang says that even though it was a parallel dimension, his actions went too far, and he finishes by saying his response was also excessive, and he accepts any punishment given to him. The hero Siegfried stares at Kang Geomma with a severe, enigmatic gaze. The boy stares back with an indifferent and apathetic look. Media, the stellar hero and Academy director, says the old man shouldn't treat young people like this. She says that even so, he's the one who saved the boy and adds that people get stubborn with age. She flirts a little and asks him to cut her some slack for the sake of her reputation. The old Siegfried, irritated, tells her not to bring that up, and Media teases that he's embarrassed. The boy wonders why this is happening while Media continues to flirt with Kang, praising him. He realizes this might be why his body feels as light as a feather. The girl explains that while Geomma was unconscious, they reviewed the footage of what happened to him. The staff watched the vision of him risking his life to save a defenseless student. Media, the stellar heroine, enthusiastically says he's the prince she always dreamed of. She adds that, in fact, he wasn't the dream of the prince himself, though the old man gets irritated with her. Frustrated, she asks the old man to let her speak, and Siegfried tells her to have some dignity. Media says she's not trying to cause problems because of his actions during the exam. She tells him to stay calm and mentions that the twins got into the academy through flattery and said they would withdraw. The heroine and Academy director Joaquin is charmed by Kang Geomma and finds this tempting. Our protagonist feels relieved to be exempted from his actions during the exam, and even more relieved that he won't have to deal with the evil twins at school afterward. At that moment, the 2 stellar heroes say they came to inform Kang Geomma of something. Before he can finish thanking them, they tell him he is the top scorer of the exam. When he receives congratulations from the 2 heroes, he is shocked and left speechless. His realization begins to sink in, and he is in complete ecstasy, unable to believe what he just heard. Our hero recalls the motto he himself created: peace and safety without incidents. Outside Joaquin Academy, the day dawns beautifully, illuminating the majestic sight. Inside her office, sipping coffee, Media, the heroine, tries to relax after a tiring day. She comments that this is the first time in 20 years of her career as a director that something like this has happened. We then see some moments from the past where Kang is shown refusing something. He refuses to join the Star Special class after the 2 heroes offer it to him. The heroine wonders if she misheard when the elders became furious. She says that the decision for the best cadet was based on the evaluation conducted by the subspace itself. Kang Geomma continues staring blankly, saying nothing. Our swordsman hero responds that even so, he doesn't like it, surprising the 2 heroes. Siegfried thinks Geomma doesn't understand what it means to be part of the Star Special class. Back in the present, Media is talking to Siegfried and draws his attention to something. She asks if Sieg is upset that Kang took first place instead of his granddaughter, and he says that's foolish. Sieg says he will not question the decision for the best cadet made by the subspace and the will of the founding hero. However, he admits he cannot accept or understand it, as Kang's abilities are not extraordinary. He would have accepted it if Kang's physical capabilities had been exceptional. Sieg would also have agreed with the decision if Kang's experience had been remarkable. But a boy so young, not even an adult yet, still managed to show him something. He demonstrated movements that seemed like an inexplicable and complex concept. This fascinated Siegfried as he watched the scene unfold during the exam. The swordsmanship Siegfried had pursued all his life was displayed before him at a level of mastery. Still, the nagging feeling he had when he unlocked Kang's blocked meridians lingered. Kang's body, which had never undergone physical training and lacked any conditioning, it seemed as though something that should not have been contained was somehow within him. Steve remains silent as he recalls the moment he saw the energy path flowing through Kang's body. He reflects that, at his age, he still possesses this competitive spirit, and especially when it comes to a boy the same age as his granddaughter. He wonders if he could have saved people the way the boy does at his age. The director of Joaquin Academy asks the old man what he thinks about it. Steve responds by asking Media if she knows what college boys call a girl like her. Curious, she asks what they call a girl like her in such circumstances, gently placing her coffee cup on the saucer. Siegfried says they call a woman like her a bitch, and she is shocked to hear him utter those words. Her eyes fill with rage and her coffee cup trembles in her hand from sheer anger. Outside the medical wing, Kang Geomma, the sashimi knife swordsman, rests peacefully. He then arrives in front of the wolf class, marked by a wooden sign. Out of sorts, the protagonist begins to reflect on what he could have done regarding media's request. The director assigns Kang to the upper class, but he protests, wanting to join the tiger class. She says the best cadet cannot go to an ordinary class, and he argues that equality should be promoted. The director of Draken Academy insists that the tiger class is out of the question. She then tells Kang Geomma she will keep something a secret between them. Media, the heroine, comments that the elders of the tiger class would create an uproar over him. Kang remarks that his plan was to graduate from a lower class to avoid ranking disputes. At least that still aligns with Kang Geomma's expectations. At that moment, the door suddenly slams shut, startling the protagonist. Kang is surprised to see the size of the wolf class and the number of students. All the students in the wolf special class pause to watch Kang Geomma entering the room. The badge on his blazer displays his name, no longer marking him as a lower class student. However, they quickly dismiss this and return to their distracted conversations. Everyone continues chatting among themselves, ignoring Kang Geomma's presence in the classroom. Our hero walks among the stairs, hoping no one looks at or speaks to him. He takes his seat and is completely ignored, imagining that the director had ensured everything was under control. Our hero Kang comments that loners have their own way of living and that suits him just fine. Suddenly, something catches his attention and he turns to observe. The red-haired girl he saved appears, trembling with embarrassment to thank him for that day. Feeling a bit confused and speechless, Kang Geomma observes her questioningly and quietly. She notices he doesn't understand what she's saying and reminds him of the admission exam. At that moment, he remembers what she's talking about. Kang wonders why she's speaking so formally when they are the same age. He says she doesn't need to thank him since anyone would have done the same in that situation. In the end, it seems like he saved her in a heroic act, but he was just trying to survive. Thinking better of it, our protagonist decides to introduce himself to the girl and says his name. She introduces herself as Chloe, and he says he didn't expect to study in the same class as her. Hearing the name Chloe, our protagonist wonders who this girl is. Even though he's played most of this game, he doesn't recognize this character's name. Kang remembers that in the advanced parts of the game, the story focuses on the demon tribes. He's surprised to see a new character appearing in the current context. At this moment, he discovers that she's a background character just like him. Then, our hero asks her to keep what happened during the exam a secret. At that moment, she tries to ask Kang Geomma for something but is interrupted. The classroom teacher of the wolf class yells for everyone to take their seats. Taking advantage of the interruption, our protagonist tells Chloe they'll talk more later. Before starting the class, the teacher congratulates all the students on their admission. He says that everyone here is inheriting the will of Valor Draken and tells them to be proud of it. He introduces himself as Wonbin, the head instructor of the wolf class, and his real name is Lee Wonbin. Lee decides to start with a simple and light physical training session for the first day. He asks the students to change and meet at the training field in 30 minutes. A boy with glasses and a bowl-cut hairstyle asks Professor Lee what the training will entail. Lee says it's simple and orders them to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats. And after that, they must run 10 laps around the training field. Lee Wonbin orders everyone to change clothes and gather at the training field now. Our protagonist wonders if this training is meant to turn cadets into bald men. Kang Geomma approaches shyly and awkwardly to ask Professor Wonbin a question. He wonders how the professor knew his name even before he introduced himself. Making an excuse to avoid the training, he says he's feeling a little unwell. The professor mutters something and seems to consider our hero's request. Lee tells him to attend the Star Class lessons instead, as the director instructed him to say so. Kang feels a bit shocked and remembers director Media saying she would keep that a secret. Geomma says he just needed to use the bathroom and that the Star Class lesson came at the right time. Professor Lee says he expected nothing less from the top cadet and that he'll be waiting for him on the field. Soon, Kang Geomma, dressed in training clothes, looks exhausted and breathes heavily. Our swordsman hero is running on the training field. While the professor encourages them to run and says it's an easy task, Kang is in last place. Running with effort and difficulty, our protagonist remains last and slows down. Lee Wonbin keeps telling them to run faster and Kang picks up the pace a bit with effort. Chloe, the girl he saved, asks if it's hard for him since he doesn't look well. He smiles and says with difficulty that he's fine, and Chloe asks which lap he's on now. The protagonist guesses he's on the 5th lap and asks which lap she's on since she's seen behind. Chloe calmly says she's on the 9th lap. Kang Geomma hears this, is shocked, and groans in disbelief at the information. Chloe encourages him to do his best and motivates our protagonist while skipping lightly. Our protagonist notices the red-haired girl effortlessly passing him in the race. Every step on the training field leaves Kang more tired, and he can barely keep going. Afternoon falls at Draken Academy, leaving the sky yellowish. Inside a room, we see several empty water bottles scattered on the floor. 2 more bottles are suddenly thrown to the ground. Kang slams a new water bottle onto the table impetuously and abruptly. After drinking an absurd amount of water, he lies down on his bed and says he's hungry. After 1 week living at Dwakin Academy, he finally encounters an unexpected problem. In the extremely fancy cafeteria of the academy, we see the students gather to have their meal. While waiting for his food at the counter, Geomma pressures the staff, saying he's very hungry. Rushing the cooks, he demands pork belly as soon as possible. The cook gives an intimidating and annoyed glare at our protagonist. It's then that Kang notices a box of meal tickets and realizes that food isn't free. Saying he'll grab a ticket right away, he requests rice with pork belly in advance. Suddenly, something seems to shock Geomma, and he quickly goes silent, observing. He is stunned by the steep price of the bowl of rice with pork belly, costing 50,000 won. He starts analyzing the entire price board and is completely shocked by the 50,000 won. Geomma keeps repeating the price of the pork belly rice bowl in a catatonic manner. Singular drops of water fall slowly. Our swordsman hero tries to make the most out of the remaining water in his plastic bottle. Throwing the plastic bottle against the wall in frustration, Geomma curses Dwakin Academy. Still starving, he considers the price of the dish absurd. He despairs upon realizing that he's almost out of money, as his father gave him very little to live on. Sadly, the protagonist looks at the empty plastic water bottle on the floor. In a quick and abrupt movement, he throws the blanket over his body. He comments that he should have taken the chance when he had it, as he's now surviving on the cheapest water. Trying to sleep, a system notification appears, showing the conditions for using his ability. He notices that his physical condition has increased to 12 and the weapon size specifications have changed. Thinking about that moment during the admission exam, the blessing window appears. He closes his eyes, trying to relax, and a faint smile spreads across his face. Observing the improvements in his body, he comments that it wasn't a complete waste of time. Our hero wonders if the blessing of the sword god cleared his blood vessels. He says that at this speed, it's almost like evolution. The blessing hasn't expanded yet, but if he continues like this, he might be able to wield a short sword. Geomma silently observes 2 kitchen knives on his table. Happily, he reflects that he used to be terrified just holding a sword during the entrance ceremony. But now, if he doesn't hold a weapon, his hands itch, and he wonders if it's the blessing's influence. Scratching his head, he questions why he feels so proud. Suddenly, he hears a knock on his door and asks who's behind it. Opening the door slowly and curiously, he keeps asking who's there. Behind the door stands Chloe, and timidly she asks if she interrupted Kang's rest. The protagonist wonders why Chloe is in his room. Smiling nervously, he says she's not interrupting anything since he was just lying down. She says she noticed he hadn't been to the cafeteria all week and was worried about him. Kang, smiling, lies to her, saying he doesn't usually eat food prepared by others. He asks her not to worry about him and she lowers her head, saying she understands. Chloe, very embarrassed, says she was thinking about cooking and having dinner with him. Quickly, before she finishes her proposal, Kang agrees and is already dressed for the occasion. She looks confused and he asks if she's inviting him to have dinner together, to which she nods. Walking ahead of her, he says he's a good cook and will prepare the food for them. As Chloe runs after him, Geomma asks if her dorm is on the other side of the street. Suddenly, night falls at Dwakin Academy. Finishing her meal, the red-haired girl says the food is delicious and Kang says he's happy with the compliment. She says he didn't just throw random ingredients together, but was also incredibly quick. Chloe comments that she only knows how to cook fish and didn't expect to try such cuisine. Geomma decides to take a look at her fridge and she allows him to do so. Opening the fridge, he sees lots of fish and she explains that she comes from a coastal area. Our hero says that's great since his specialty in the kitchen is fish. The swordsman protagonist comments that he was really eager to cook something. He says he'll feel revitalized cutting sashimi again after so long. However, the only problem is the blessing of the sword god, which might activate during this moment. Geomma looks at the kitchen knives in front of him and begins to sweat nervously. To try and prevent the blessing from activating, he asks Chloe for a longer knife. He tells her that it's kind of strange to use a knife like this, considering they are his weapon. After she says she understands, Chloe catches his attention with something. The red-haired girl picks up a combat katana and asks if it's good enough for slicing sashimi. Embarrassed, he says a katana won't do and that he'll just use the kitchen knife instead. Realizing there's no other way, he decides to finish this within 30 seconds using the kitchen knife. The pain resistance blessing is activated as soon as he grips the knife. With his eyes glowing, Geomma becomes extremely focused on cutting the fish. Meanwhile, Chloe watches the scene in shock, her mouth wide open. Our protagonist remembers that he was once recognized as the best swordsman in his country. He decides that it's possible to cut everything in 30 seconds and the blessing of the sword god activates. With quick and precise cuts, he appears to perform the task with ease. It only takes him 21 seconds to slice, debone, and remove the fish's entrails. Crossing his arms, Geomma proudly looks at his work while Chloe eats happily. She says it was so delicious that it felt like a masterpiece, and he admits he's still at his peak. Chloe asks how he's so good at cooking, and he responds that he worked in a Japanese restaurant. She wonders what a part-time job is, and he asks if she even knows what that means. The red-haired girl apologizes and Kang tells her there's no need to apologize. As Kang and Geomma had expected, this shows the difference in status between them. Changing the subject, our protagonist says he's glad she enjoyed the food. Chloe excitedly says that since he cooked, she can handle the dishes, and he agrees. As she quickly washes the dishes, he smiles, feeling proud. Gazing at the beautiful full moon, he feels happy, satisfied, and well-fed. In this moment of contemplation, Kang Geomma begins to hum a tune. Suddenly, the red-haired girl makes a loud noise and apologizes for disturbing him. She drops the dishes again, and he asks if she's ever washed dishes before. Meanwhile, our protagonist grew up doing this since a young age. When he gets up from the chair to look out the window, he accidentally knocks over a book. The notebook falls, and its pages flip open from the impact, revealing Chloe's diary. Kang looks at the diary in surprise, realizing he discovered it by accident. The diary opens to a page where she wrote about needing to repay Kang for helping her during the exam. Seeing the round handwriting and cute stickers, he realizes she's like any other girl her age. He decides to put the diary back in its place without reading it. Noticing the pages are open and facing up, he becomes curious and ends up reading a few pages. She wrote that the man who saved her is in the same class as her and she's too embarrassed to talk to him. Kang Geomma reads this and finds it adorable, leaving him with a silly smile on his face. At that moment, he understands why she couldn't speak to him in the classroom. Curious, he decides he needs to read a bit more of Chloe's diary. The moment he closes the diary, Chloe appears and asks if he read what was inside. Heroic families gain honor by eliminating monsters and receive admiration from society. However, within these institutions, there are always deep-seated interests that exploit the weak for power. When even public authorities are powerless to condemn them, a heroic family steps forward. To take on the role of Shadows, the name of this family is Auditor of Sicily, a family that operates in the shadows, seeking light, balancing order and eliminations. Those born into this family undergo mental conditioning before puberty. They must suppress their emotions and endure rigorous training. Thus, we see various members of the Auditor family of Sicily suffering and being tortured. An old man ties a man to a wooden plank and orders a red-haired girl to kill him with a sword. This is how people in this family are trained to become ruthless assassins. The first time that little red-haired girl dirtied her hands was at the age of 15. Chloe, Auditor of Sicily, is the granddaughter of that old man who told her she had a talent for assassination. This is what Chloe was told before she even reached adulthood, and she had to accept it. The constant assassin training distorted her mentality and cast a shadow over her heart. When her identity was worn down and almost no emotion remained, Chloe joined the academy. She had reached the age to enter Draken Academy, where classes are determined by individual skill. Although her family members sought the shadows, it possessed strength above the dragon class. Even so, they were assigned to the common class due to family tradition, and because of the agreement between the Auditor family and Draken Academy. Chloe remembers her grandfather's advice to remain unseen. However, her 3 years of youth were taken from her by her family, along with her personal freedom. Faced with the destiny of becoming an assassin, Chloe didn't utter a single word. The girl from the Auditor family simply accepted it, thinking she couldn't change it. She thought this way until she met a certain student at Draken Academy. Chloe recalls how the evil twins attacked her, how Kang Geomma appeared to save her. Yelling, commanding them not to touch her, Kang called Mao Jun and Shun crazy. Although death isn't possible in the subspace, it would have been Chloe's first time experiencing it. And even when facing her death, she didn't cower in fear at that moment. In her mind, she wondered if there was anyone else there at all. Chloe faced it calmly. Even with her predetermined fate, she had stopped fighting. That was how Chloe had learned to live, and that was how she intended to continue living. Hearing the evil twin talk about eliminating her, the girl realized nothing would change anyway. Her destiny seemed so clear right before her own eyes, right in front of her. Or so it seemed until Kang Geomma appeared and saved her life on the day of the admission exam. It felt as though the sun had broken through the dark clouds in the middle of an icy storm. Something warm emerged and swirled inside her as she watched the student saving her life. A sword wielded by one's own will, a weapon used to save someone, not to kill. Saving her was the reason Kang Geomma wielded his knife and faced the two. She remembered the fairy tale she used to secretly read and hide beside her bed. Chloe, Auditor of Sicily, began to recall her childhood, reading that fairy tale. The story was about a princess locked in a castle by her father. She saw in Kang Geomma the figure of a prince who came to save that princess. And in him, Chloe saw the love of a prince for his princess, just like in the stories from the books. The fairy tale revolved around a prince who appeared and saved people. Her face turned red at that moment, and she felt pressure in her chest. An unknown and hazy feeling arose in Chloe that day. Watching the entire scene, which lasted only a few seconds, Chloe had a single thought. The thought was recognizing that unfamiliar feeling as love. Returning to the present, Kang Geomma makes a strange expression, forcing a smile. Chloe, still wearing dishwashing gloves, looks at him with a somber expression. Scratching his head, Kang Geomma gives Chloe an uncomfortable smile. She keeps staring at the protagonist, speechless, realizing he read her diary. Kang mutters that this is messed up and wonders what went wrong. He questions if that was the moment he first saw the innocence of the girl, or if it was the moment he desperately chased her, just for a meal. Trying to change the subject, Geomma tells Chloe the moon is beautiful tonight. The protagonist says that thanks to her, he had a delicious dinner after a long time. With a smile on his face, he says he's leaving and she asks again if he read the diary. As she removes her gloves, he feigns ignorance and asks what she's talking about. She points to the diary, and he pretends to be surprised looking at the object on the table. Kang acts as if it's a study book and says she must study too much. But Chloe Auditor cuts him off and says it's a diary. Geomma wonders if she has eyes on the back of her head as she managed to catch him reading the diary. Moreover, he is bothered by her formal tone, which he had insisted she change. The protagonist notices that Chloe seems like a completely different person at this moment. Kang starts to say he didn't see anything and she begins to pressure him, asking him not to lie. Then he tells the truth. They stare at each other in silence as she tries to avoid eye contact. Geomma widens his eyes, shocked as he sees something unexpected happening. Chloe Auditor begins drawing her katana from its sheath, looking at him with a cold and cruel gaze. Our swordsman hero is startled to see this happening so abruptly and suddenly. Looking for an escape route, he glances at the window, realizing the fall is too high. He knows Chloe's room is on the 4th floor near the edge of the roof and jumping would injure him. The protagonist then realizes the only exit is the door right behind her. Realizing he's facing a dilemma, Geomma notices he's cornered. Looking at the red-haired girl with fear and apprehension, he wonders what she's doing. It's at this moment that the girl from the Auditor family places the blade of her sword on the ground. When she fully unsheathes her katana, reality seems to distort around Chloe. Geomma cannot believe what Chloe is doing and imagines she's lost her mind. Sweating nervously, our hero admits he has a vague idea of what this could be. The lifeless pupils, the vacant red eyes that seem devoid of life. He's certain this is a Yandir. Furthermore, the way her demeanor shifts from fierce and energetic to completely different in an instant. Realizing he's in the presence of a Yandir, our hero is shocked, clenching his teeth. He fears that Chloe might have a split personality that was hard to conceive. In addition to her bizarre Yandir behavior, he imagines she could have a divided personality, and that opening her diary might have been the trigger for this personality change. He realizes this is dangerous because she will likely pursue him until she eliminates him. Geomma decides to establish his base there to ensure his safety in the future. But first, he needs to focus on escaping this terrifying and bizarre situation. Geomma starts thinking and remembers the remaining time is 9 seconds. However, his sashimi knife is in his room, but he recalls the knife he used earlier. Sweating nervously, he begins searching for the kitchen knife. Nevertheless, he fears going back there and potentially losing an arm or a leg. Still with lifeless red eyes, Chloe threatens to attack with her katana again. Geomma grows increasingly frightened, sweating and clenching his teeth and fists. He notices a box cutter among Chloe's study materials that he could use for protection. In a quick and abrupt movement, the red-haired girl charges at Kang. Our protagonist's eyes widen as he notices her incredible speed. Kang quickly grabs the box cutter from her desk and wields it to protect himself from the Yandir. Frustrated, he reflects that he wished to resolve this verbally, not physically. The swordsman raises the blades of the box cutter, preparing it for use. The system notifies Geomma that the user's mental state improves with ingenuity. Words and actions are temporarily imbued with an aura of intimidation. Restrictive power begins to adjust to suit the user. The divine protection of the sword god is then finally activated. The blue aura of the sword god's blessing surrounds Geomma, who strikes with the box cutter. A message appears for him, wishing that the blessings of the gods be with him. The two engage in a melee weapon duel, with the winner being whoever lands the first blow. Geomma tells Chloe that her hair is a little long. Hearing this, the red-haired girl widens her eyes in surprise. Our swordsman hero says he'll trim a bit of Chloe's hair. Suddenly, Chloe Auditor wakes up with short hair, confused, and calls for Kang. Getting out of bed, the now short-haired, red-haired girl asks where he is. She says she only remembers him looking out the window while she was washing dishes, and at that moment, she decided to take a peek and remembers nothing else after that. Getting out of bed, the red-haired girl starts searching for her katana. She quickly finds her sword leaning against a piece of furniture near her bed. Chloe feels relieved to find her katana so quickly. The girl comments that she used to lose consciousness every time she wielded her katana. She recalls her grandfather talking about it and her saying she didn't remember anything. And the old man's words echo in her mind, telling her not to deny her assassin skills. Chloe begins blaming herself for losing consciousness at that moment and missing her chance with Geomma. With her face buried in her pillow, she starts getting excited thinking about Geomma. The girl wonders if she said anything strange to him when she lost consciousness. At that moment, she notices a box cutter lying on the floor of her room and finds it odd. Scratching her face, she wonders why the utility knife is on the floor. Only now does Chloe notice that her hair is shorter and wonders if someone cut it with a utility knife. Seeing her hair in the trash can, she imagines that someone cut it, cleaned up, and left. She considers Geomma very kind for doing that and decides to write about it in her diary before she forgets. Chloe sits at her desk and begins jotting this down in her personal diary. The girl finishes writing and concludes with the words, "I love Geomma." Outside Jirakian Academy, our protagonist starts feeling unwell. Suddenly, he begins vomiting and his vomit has the colors of a rainbow. Not knowing how that happened, Kang feels relieved to have survived the situation. Still nauseous and vomiting, he comments that going 5 seconds beyond the 9 caused this. Feeling his stomach churn, he remarks that he's going to throw up everything he ate for dinner. He decides to sit on a bench in the Academy's plaza to rest after his hectic night. His entire dinner is gone after the vomiting, and Kang Geomma feels hungry again. Looking at the beautiful full moon, our hero wonders who Klo really is. Usually, the purpose of swordsmanship is to use a single motion to strike a target, or to subdue them without necessarily injuring the target. However, the katana Klo used aimed mercilessly at vital points alone, as if the girl were a specialist in creating ambushes and eliminating people. If he had been ambushed, his head would have undoubtedly flown off. But instinctively, our swordsman hero aimed for the back of the red-haired girl's neck. And fortunately, the knife was short, and he only cut Klo Auditor's hair. He reflects that he cleaned up quickly, so there shouldn't be any more clues. Placing a hand on his heart, he feels relieved to have peace and safety in that moment. They say that being ordinary the way Kang Geomma aspired to be is harder than it seems. But it goes beyond that, because when he was brought into this game, he wasn't lacking ambition. For someone like him who reigned at the pinnacle with the sashimi knife, abandoning the romanticism of such a life wasn't an easy choice. However, he accepts that everyone has a role already designated, the blessing of miracles. That's the name given to the game and the protagonist's unique blessing in this world that he hasn't yet seen. Along with the blessing of valor, Belaruakin, he remembers 2 legendary blessings in the game. The contents of this blessing are quite intuitive. Someone's plea to save the world from the Demon King is heard. The game's protagonist was chosen by the sacred and demonic sword Balmon. In contrast, Kang Geomma can only wield ordinary sashimi knives, which will quickly go dull. He says there's no need to further explain the discrepancy between them. Our swordsman hero claps his hands on his cheeks to regain focus. Moreover, since he entered the academy encountering these figures and surreal situations, it's making him forget his goals, and he says he stopped for a few reasons. Thinking further, he wonders if there's not a single ordinary person in this world. He says he has a vague understanding of the characters and an unclear sense of the game's world. It's been more than a week since he joined the academy, and according to the story, the time has come. The protagonist's blessing has been activated, and they're just completing the enrollment process. This means the game's story is truly about to begin now. Despite knowing the general plot, Kang Geomma hasn't seen the ending. Knowing the story halfway through is an advantage, but he regrets not finishing it before. Whatever happens, he decides to follow the official route and live a peaceful life instead of trying anything else. If everything gets mixed up, it will only waste the merits he has left. Assuming Kang's memory is accurate, things will become grim in the 3rd year of the academy. Sensing the birth of a hero, the demon race will unite their forces to attack the academy. The scale will grow larger, eventually leading to a global war between demons and humanity. From there, the game's story will follow a cliched fantasy plot and events. Someone holding a phone with the game wonders why the story is heading in this direction. He, who sought the charm of a youthful life he never experienced in his younger years. Kim's boss wonders how they could be eliminated like that, saying it's quite terrifying. In his past life, he was very attached to the game's characters and deleted the game with that in mind. What's even more terrifying is that war takes place in this world. While the protagonist reflects on this war afflicting the game's world, he starts wondering if he might die during this war between humans and demons. However, with great conviction, he declares that he will not be eliminated during this war. There are still almost 3 years left, and he needs a realistic goal, not an escapist fantasy. Kang Geomma continues to reflect that he cannot die so silently. Our protagonist firmly states that he needs to get stronger to survive all of this. Most mass-produced game narratives tend to have a happy ending. Kang Geomma imagines that, in the end, the protagonist will save the day. However, he knows he needs power to protect himself and avoid dying so easily in the war. Therefore, he will train to survive without drawing too much attention. After all, if he becomes a standout, he could be drafted into the army to fight demons. And that's something our swordsman hero wants to avoid because he knows his fate would be grim. Our protagonist also knows he needs to be cautious with the use of the pain blessing. After all, having used the sashimi knife out of necessity, the burden on his body is still too great. Opening the system and the blessing data, he comments that they're impressive, but observing carefully, he notices there's a lot of new information in the system. Reading the parts about physical and mental stats affected by the weapon, he sees that the numbers represent a rank. He also notices an assimilation rate and wonders what the question marks on his profile mean. Unsure of what these question marks are, he clicks to try to uncover them. The system notifies him that access is restricted due to unmet conditions. Kang Geomma concludes that it doesn't matter for now. The most important thing for Kang right now is his physical training and acquiring a new weapon. He knows he definitely cannot rely on the 30-second ability forever. He also decides to train the swords that do not meet the conditions for the sword god's blessing. Fortunately, next month there will be combat training instead of intermediate exams. Looking at an app on his phone, Kang Geomma realizes the reward for this will be the Muraseum, a rank B-class sword, and if he can wield it skillfully, he'll use it until graduation. Its specifications don't meet the sword god's blessing, so it won't be as burdensome as the others. Now that Kang Geomma stops to think, there's more to do than he initially thought. While reflecting, sitting on a bench under the moonlight, someone calls out to him. A blue-haired girl behind him calls out to Kang Geomma. The beautiful blue-haired girl, holding a sword, says this place belongs to her. Completely sweaty, likely from training, she says she wants to rest on her bench. Kang Geomma looks at her with fear and dread, sweating nervously, his eyes wide open. Recognizing the girl as the old man's granddaughter, he is shocked and can't say a word. Starting to get annoyed with the silent boy, the blue-haired girl asks him to move aside. Recognizing Abel, our hero realizes she seems unreal, no matter how he looks at her. Kang Geomma ends up feeling embarrassed for staring at her for too long. Abel says he doesn't need to leave, he just needs to move over a bit so she can sit. He wonders if this bench really belongs to her due to the class system, but should be public. Kang knows that getting involved with the main heroine could affect the course of the story, so he remains silent. Sitting next to him, sweaty from training and wearing exercise clothes, our protagonist starts noticing that she truly possesses a sublime beauty. Paying too much attention to her blue pigmented hair, he becomes shocked. Abel comments to Geomma that the stars are really visible here, startling him. Speechless at the girl happily gazing at the stars, he remains silent again. He wonders if this is really Abel, the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, as he knows her. Kang knows that the protagonist of the game is also a handsome man who is hard to approach at first. Abel asks if Kang's weapon is also a sword, and he asks how she knew that. The girl says her grandfather told her about it. She also says she heard that master swordsmen have a different look in their eyes. Still embarrassed by Abel's sudden approach, the hero stays silent. Abel breaks the ice by picking up her large, ornate sword and showing it to Kang. She asks, overly excited, if he wants to try holding her sword. Kang Geomma responds respectfully that he has no interest in doing what she asked. Embarrassed, Abel doesn't respond and he wonders if she's upset with him. Finding all of this very strange, the protagonist questions if this is really the Abel he knows. Breaking the silence, the girl asks if Kang Geomma truly knows who she is. Our protagonist begins to wonder if the girl is suspicious of him, and he knows that in this school there isn't a single student who doesn't know Abel. Kang Geomma responds dryly and innocently that he doesn't know her very well. The blue-haired girl says she's never seen him around and Kang wonders what to do next. She asks if he doesn't think it's rude that she doesn't know his name while he knows hers. Saying they just met, Kang asks if it's really necessary to share his name. Abel says it would be good, after all, he could be a spy for the Demon King infiltrated in the school. She says that at this late hour, there's no reason for him to be alone. Realizing the girl is suspicious of him while holding her sword, he finds it ridiculous. When he asks what she was doing, she says she was training, and he responds that he was doing the same. Questioned by Abel about the type of exercises he was doing, he says they were breathing exercises. For some reason startled, the girl places her hand in front of her body, and he notices the calluses on her hand. Abel begins trembling and reacts to this information in a very strange and exaggerated way. After that odd reaction, she straightens her posture, standing silent and austere. Kang Geomma breaks the ice, commenting that Abel is working very hard. She agrees and says people don't understand what it means to be a member of the Nibelung family. She mentions that she always has to be the best and most perfect because she inherited that bloodline. After all, if anyone sees a small flaw in her, they immediately attack. And as Kang Geomma already knows, she isn't the first-place student in the exams this year. Being honest, she says it's the first time she's ever lost to someone in her life. However, she lightly smiles and says it was relieving to lose for the first time. Still, she says she's curious to find out who the person is and take them down when she meets them. When Kang hears her say she'll take down the person who took her spot, he spits out his water. Geomma tells her she doesn't need to go that far, and irritated, the girl says it hurts her pride. Pleading with her grandfather, she discovered that the person isn't even in her class. Additionally, he skipped the first-place oath, and she says there's no way she couldn't be irritated by him. Kang Geomma asks Abel why she's telling him all this. She realizes she's indeed telling all this to someone she just met. Abel then responds that she's telling him because he seems weak. She says her family's motto is to be merciful to the weak and severe with the strong. However, all the students in her class are insufferable, so she doesn't have many friends. Our protagonist then realizes that's why she was so cold to him. Stretching, the blue-haired girl says she's leaving now, and Kang bids her farewell. Silent, she seems to reflect and then asks when he's going to say his name, and he says he has no idea. The day ends, and starting anew the next day, Kang Geomma returns to his classroom. Our hero says that his academic life flowed more smoothly and calmly than he expected. Klo somehow integrated well into the class and managed to make friends. Meanwhile, Kang Geomma, afraid of running into her, constantly avoided eye contact. Sometimes, when he accidentally looked at Klo, her friends would throw cold glares at him. However, the glares he received for being a special admission student no longer affected him. Besides, he's not the only special admission student in the Wolf class. There are 3 others. Even though they are few, they avoided one another, and Kang imagines it's due to an inferiority complex. Thinking about it, Kang realizes it was a good decision not to join the upper classes. In the Dragon and Star classes, students must be forming factions and engaging in politics, When he played the game, he was amazed at the political intrigue in those classes. Just thinking about what his life would be like in those classrooms makes him feel uneasy. Either way, Geomma is finally eating well and starts thinking about what he'll eat today. The director hands him a black card that grants access to food for being the top-ranked student. This is an employee card, and Kang expresses his deep gratitude to the director's office for this favor. With a light expression on his face, he also deeply and silently thanks the secretary. Thinking further, he realizes he's faithfully fulfilling his role as a student. Beyond that, our hero hasn't done anything that could affect the main storyline of the game. Feeling good, he says he just has to keep doing this for 3 more years and everything will be fine. And if he can do this, he can finally reach the future he has been dreaming of. In a class in the Wolf class at Kawakin Academy, they are learning about the past. 700 years ago, after the start of the First Great War between humans and demons, Valor Draken founded the academy with 7 disciples to train the next generation of heroes. The teacher says this topic will be on the test and asks them to make sure to remember it. Geomma, feeling drowsy, realizes this is content he already knows very well. Looking at the image of the great and historical hero Valor Draken drawn on the board, the teacher explains that he fought against the Demon King's right-hand man and leader of the First Legion. This right-hand man and commander of the First Legion was named Lycan. After a bloody war that lasted 20 long years, Valor Draken achieved victory. On that day, a massive and blinding light shot into the sky. When this light reached the heavens, it blinded everyone's vision. However, during this battle, Valor Draken lost one of his arms and could no longer fight. Everything around him on that battlefield was consumed by cacophonous screams. Neither side claimed a clear victory in this war of mountains of corpses. Fortunately, both sides seized the opportunity to establish a ceasefire. The hero Valor Draken created Draken Academy to train the future generation of heroes. Thus, the great war between humans and demons ended with a ceasefire pact. And in this way, humanity enjoyed over 700 years of peace and harmony. The students in the Wolf class begin to imagine a war scenario in this century. Kang reflects on being the only one who knows the end of this long 700-year peace is near, and that all humans have naturally grown accustomed to this eternal peace. Geomma wishes he could give a hint about this to Media, the director of Draken Academy. However, this goes beyond altering fate, and he doesn't know what consequences it could have. Our protagonist ponders whether to reveal and warn Media about the end of this long peace. Media often says she wants to leave her role as Academy director as soon as possible. Almost as a habit, she mentions it all the time and has even invited Kang to run away with her. Media is the first character in the game to detect anomalies in this way. Thanks to her unique blessing, the Poet's Blessing, she was the first of the heroes to go to the front lines. The protagonist didn't play the game up to this point, but one day he checked Chemiwiki. There he saw that Media was the first of the 7 stellar heroes to be sacrificed by the Demon King's army. Meanwhile, the chef who works with the hero is researching Media, and looking at Chemiwiki, he realizes that she was killed in the war between humans and demons. He is shocked to realize that she is destined to die. Reflecting, Geomma says that if only he didn't know the truth, it would be easier. The teacher ends the class and asks them to study for the exams in 2 weeks. The students are all impressed with the quality of the teacher's lecture in the Wolf class. Our protagonist notices some unusual movement and commotion among the students. He wonders if it's because of a specific person who might be at the school. Realizing it's May 5th, he confirms that today is the highly anticipated day. The students, frustrated, say he won't come to their class and will only go to the star class. Geomma says that if his memory serves, May 5th is the protagonist's admission day. Everyone stops to watch the arrival of this world's protagonist at the school, applauding him. Liam Van Reinhardt arrives at Kawakin Academy with style and cold composure. From this day on, the so-called cracks in the long 700-year peace begin to appear. Annoyed with Leon, after all, they say his face is so perfect, it seems unreal. Kang invites him, and it's a general consensus that in the game, most women end up falling for him. Geomma has an intrusive thought. If this were an 18-plus game, Leon would have died young even before fighting the Demon King. Moreover, all the women who approach him are rich and powerful, such as Rachel Demira, the niece of the saint, and an SSR class individual. Saki Ryojo, the daughter of the Bao Saint, also ranked SSR. And finally, Abel von Nibelung, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor and also SSR class. Even the members referred to as the protagonist's group are impressive. Despite being extremely annoying, the protagonist blessed with the miracle M stands out. Leon von Reinhardt is among the first to be conscripted into the war 3 years from now. In truth, saying he was conscripted is generous. It's nothing short of forced enlistment. Thinking about this, Geomma recalls that Valor Draken could only seal the first commander. Geomma wonders just how strong the Demon King is. He starts to think this might be a crazy story where the protagonist loses in the end. The protagonist, Leon von Reinhardt, is chatting with people at the school. Suddenly, he abruptly turns toward Geomma and stares at him for a few seconds. Our protagonist is shocked to receive such a gaze from someone so important out of nowhere. Then Leon von Reinhardt smiles and gently closes his eyes toward Geomma. Our hero observes this scene silently, unsure of how to react. Calming himself, he says this is the miracle and blessing and reassures himself that Leon will handle things. He assumes that Leon has a face that inspires confidence and even finds himself convinced by him. Suddenly, someone catches our swordsman hero's attention and he turns to see who it is. After that, night falls and we see the exterior of the academy's training grounds. In the training field, our protagonist practices his swordsmanship skills. As expected, the blessing doesn't manifest when he's outside the required conditions. He then stares at the calluses forming on his palms. He reflects that he needs to learn to handle a sword to a certain extent and not rely on the blessing. Going back to the morning before the training, Chloe tries to talk to Kang and asks if she did something wrong. Frustrated, he says to himself that she almost cut his neck and is still asking if she did anything wrong. That's what he'd like to say, but since they'll share the same classroom for a year, he restrains himself. Smiling kindly, he says nothing happened and she asks if he's serious and he affirms. Geomma decides to maintain peace and avoid making unnecessary enemies at Dwakin Academy. Chloe says she's relieved and our hero wonders who she is and why she acts this way. Even though the girl was unconscious, he noticed something when holding her sword. Chloe's sword was imbued with a feeling of sadness. Somehow, her sword was pleading for help. At the same time, her fierce killing intent sent chills down Geomma's spine. If she truly had the intent to kill, she would be more dangerous than the Mao twins. Excusing herself to our swordsman hero, she offers to make dinner for him again. She emphasizes that even if it's not up to the standards, she still wants to provide a meal. As our protagonist thinks about this, he remembers her attempt to kill him. However, right in front of him, she wears an emotional, teary expression that pressures him. He admits that her eyes really put him in a tough spot. After all, refusing would be awkward, and accepting might mean waking up in her fridge the next day. Before responding, he asks Chloe if he can request something from her that isn't dinner. He adds that he can't think of anyone but her ask for this favor. The red-haired girl becomes excited, her cheeks blushing. Geomma asks Chloe to teach him some swordsmanship techniques. In any case, our hero comments that he needed a swordsmanship instructor, and that this was a good excuse to dodge dinner with the maniacal girl. Besides, Chloe is incredibly strong and will make an excellent swordsmanship teacher for Kang. Before going to sleep, Geomma searches the internet for how to deal with a yandere. Watching the video, How to Survive a Yandere, he comments that it was very helpful. Suddenly, Chloe appears at the training grounds, shouting Geomma's name. Saying she's been waiting for him, Kang responds that he just arrived and asks about her. Extremely eager to teach Kang swordsmanship, she says she just got there as well. She mentions she arrived at 6:30 and Kang reminds her they agreed to meet at 8. With a love-struck expression and inappropriate attire, she asks if there's something wrong with her. Our protagonist quickly responds that there's nothing wrong with Chloe. He also now notices that without her uniform, she has defined and toned muscles. And now he understands why the red-haired girl is so strong. In any case, he considers her a cute girl. Smiling, Geomma hands a wooden stick to Chloe. She holds it and asks the protagonist if they aren't going to use real weapons. Kang wonders if he heard her correctly, who would train with real swords in a life-or-death duel. Our swordsman says that training is training and suggests using sticks so they don't get hurt. Chloe says that's kind of him and lets out a sinister, macabre laugh. She holds the stick and tests it with an extremely fast strike that creates a strong gust of wind. Geomma wonders how much strength she has as he can see the air being cut by her strike. He says it's better to protect his head and if necessary will use the blessing as a last resort. The protagonist begins reviewing the specifications of the sword God's blessing. The dimensions of the sword won't be an issue, and he notices his physical condition improving. He wonders if the blessing was always like this, as it seems to update based on proficiencies. The additional conditions don't make sense to him. He thinks they shouldn't exist. He questions how much he needs to evolve for the question marks to be revealed. Chloe notices him observing the system and his blessing and asks if something happened. Knowing that only he can see the specifications of his blessing, he apologizes. Geomma knows he must have looked like a lunatic lost in his thoughts. He asks Chloe to go easy on him today since it's his first time training in swordsmanship. Our hero grips the wooden stick firmly and prepares for the training to begin. He asks the red-haired girl if they can start the training. Facing her directly, he says that since his past life, he is focused on practicing things. The protagonist believes in the saying that seeing something once is better than hearing it 100 times. To reach the top in any field, it's not enough to simply sacrifice blood and flesh. It's always necessary to be willing to sacrifice your entire body. The wooden stick then becomes energized with a pink aura. Geomma reflects on how quickly he has adapted to life at Dwakin Academy. Chloe emanates a pink aura from her body and her training weapon as she faces Kang. This is the result of accumulated learning since her youth. Geomma reflects that his posture is terrible and his hands are sweaty from nervousness. However, he knows that the goal of swordsmanship is to strike the target with precision. Chloe suddenly bursts forward with a sudden and abrupt lunge toward Kang, catching him off guard. Geomma is shocked by Chloe's speed and the suddenness of her attack. In a quick and unpredictable move, Chloe nearly lands a hit on Geomma with her stick. Our protagonist manages to dodge at the last second, avoiding the full impact of the strike. In shock, Kang had expected Chloe to go easy on him based on what she had said. Chloe adjusts her grip on the stick and scritches hands to change her attack pattern. Then she bursts forward again in another sudden and rapid attack, disappearing from Kang's view. She executes another swift strike with the weapon, but Kang Geomma dodges using his torso. However, he feels his body go numb for a moment before attempting a counterattack. Even so, he celebrates blocking the strike and decides to counterattack Chloe. But before he can notice, she jumps and anticipates Kang's counterattack. Getting into a defensive stance, he grows frustrated seeing the girl suddenly become even faster. Kang then realizes that until now, Chloe was actually holding back against him. At the moment Chloe attacks, Kang successfully blocks and deflects her strike. The two sticks collide with a loud clash, but Kang's weapon begins to crack. After defending several strikes, he realizes she doesn't stop attacking, and he starts to tire. Chloe keeps changing her positions and attacking from all sides while Kang defends. In shock, Kang Geomma imagines that he might die if one of these strikes hits him. Even blocking is difficult, and he can't find any opening to counterattack. Suddenly, our hero's stick cracks in half and flies into the air. Both of them look at the broken wooden stick in silence and disbelief. Chloe quickly apologizes for not holding back and accidentally breaking the weapon. Geomma continues holding the broken stick without saying anything, and she asks if he's okay. At that moment, the conditions for the blessing of the sword god are activated, and Chloe notices it. The blessing detects that the weapon is damaged and uses Kang's personality strength to adjust it. The system then notifies him that, as the blessing is activated, his humanity level has decreased. The fervor of the sword god's blessing begins to manifest. Kang Geomma's expression and aura change, becoming frightening and unlike his usual self. With the condition of the weapon met, the damaged weapon causes an error to occur. While this happens, Chloe observes in shock, unable to say anything. The blessing uses the suppressor system to gradually adjust the user's personality. Kang Geomma's humanity level decreases as an ominous aura begins to surround him. Our protagonist's eyes take on a hollow and unsettling appearance. The feared blessing of the sword god is finally activated once more. We then see Kim in his chef's attire standing in a completely white space. Seeing the kitchen before him, he wonders if he has been dreaming this entire time. He notices a fish in front of him and decides to get back to work, finishing the preparation. On this day, he decides to use a Chinese knife after having relied only on the sashimi knife for so long. However, when he tries to select the Chinese knife, an error occurs and he cannot choose it. Kim then attempts to use another knife with a different, larger shape, but an error occurs again. He asks aloud who is in this space with him. A voice tells him not to worry and to keep doing what he is doing. Kim notices that only the sashimi knife remains, and the voice insists he choose that knife. However, Kim says that holding that knife causes him immense pain. The voice asks if he is still feeling that pain even now. When he finally holds the sashimi knife, Kim realizes it feels completely normal. He even feels invigorated holding the knife, and the voice says that's how it should be. The mysterious voice in his mind ominously says that it must remain this way. Malicious hands seem to control Kim like a puppet as he declares he will prepare a masterpiece today. Returning to training with Chloe, the fervor of the sword god manifests in Kang. An immensely dark and powerful aura begins to engulf our hero. Chloe, in shock, asks Kang Geomma if he's okay. Seeing him move in an unusual manner, she keeps asking if he's alright. He suddenly changes direction and charges at Chloe like a whirlwind, leaving a trail of shimmering blue light and energy as he lunges toward her. Kang attacks quickly and unpredictably, but Chloe manages to block the strike with her weapon. The girl is shocked as she blocks the strike, calling out Geomma's name in alarm. Her feet leave the ground due to the force of the impact, and she is terrified by the change in him. Ignoring Chloe's calls, our protagonist initiates another charge to attack her again. When he lands a blow with his damaged weapon, he throws Chloe across the room. While he drops to his knees, Chloe is hurled through the air, slamming into the wall. Chloe is injured, spitting out tomato sauce from her mouth, sighing a severe wound. The red-haired girl notices that he has become a completely different person. Without allowing Chloe to recover, he charges at her again with another monstrous attack. Chloe barely manages to dodge, stepping back to avoid another impact that would cause her extreme pain. Kang Geomma's eyes glow with a radiant blue light emanating from the blessing. Resting her weapon on the ground, Chloe says she's been hurt badly from his last attack. Clutching her injury and clearly in pain, she says she cannot move and calls out to Kang. She wonders what has happened to him and says the duel must be stopped. Injured and extremely exhausted, Chloe begs Geomma to end the fight. He ignores her, veins bulging in his face as he prepares another powerful attack. Badly wounded and unable to move, Chloe accepts that she cannot dodge this strike. The red-haired girl begins pleading for Geomma to regain his senses. Kang Geomma delivers a powerful punch toward Chloe that seems to tear through reality itself. Before being struck and in immense pain, Chloe screams for our hero to wake up from his trance. Suddenly, we return to Kim, the chef, in his kitchen cutting fish. He wonders what is happening and why the fish moves away just as he tries to cut it. He grows increasingly frustrated at how quickly the fish avoids the slices of his knife. Kim begins to hear a very strange noise and realizes he needs to fillet the fish quickly. However, it sounds like human words to him, and he wonders if he's imagining things. The inaudible words seem to form a name, Kang Geomma, which leaves Kim confused. Hearing the name Geomma again, he sees the image of a man reflected on his knife. At that moment, he remembers that he is, in fact, Kang Geomma and snaps out of the trance. His appearance then changes to Kang Geomma's, and he finds himself back in the kitchen setting. Looking at his own distorted and transformed image, he recognizes himself as Kang Geomma. Kim then sees Chloe shouting at him to regain consciousness, and he recognizes the girl. Kim identifies himself as Kang Geomma and understands he is truly inside the game. Back to reality, a large impact occurs from the powerful throw of an object. Kang regains his consciousness before hitting Chloe and instinctively throws his stick away. The girl opens her eyes, unable to believe she's still alive, with tears streaming down her face. Gradually, she realizes her plan worked, and Kang Geomma is back to himself. With a kind expression, the protagonist holds Chloe and says they should stop for today. Embarrassed and worried, the red-haired girl asks if the protagonist is okay. The hero thanks the girl for helping him with the training and says he'll head inside first. Chloe, still in shock from everything that happened, remains silent and doesn't respond. Night falls at Walking Academy, darkening the sky around the campus. Returning to her dorm in pain, Chloe reflects that she had felt this way since the exam. She always noticed Kang's martial talent and that he had something beyond just his strength. It wasn't a technique, but a raw, violent sensation that emanated from within him. Despite training hard for a long time, she couldn't even come close to matching him. And all of this happened while he was using an incomplete, damaged wooden sword. Chloe tells herself that she expected him to be strong, but he still managed to surprise her. A man in the shadows comments that the red-haired girl seems to be enjoying herself. She immediately goes on alert, narrowing her eyes suspiciously at the man in the shadows. A red-haired boy in a mask from the Wolf class named Nox Auditor, a second-year student, steps forward. Chloe quickly recognizes her brother and responds to his call. Annoyed, Nox says that as soon as she entered the academy, the first thing she did was hang out with a commoner. Chloe scolds her brother, asking him not to call Kang Geomma that. The masked brother asks if the boy's name is Geomma, and says the auditors will want to eliminate him. Irritated, Chloe closes her eyes and doesn't respond to her brother. Dryly and objectively, she says that even if the entire family comes, they won't be able to defeat him. After saying this, she turns and walks away to her room, leaving Nox alone. Thoughtful and reflective, Nox commits the name Geomma to memory. Kang decides to make it clear that the power he possesses is not a blessing or divine grace. In truth, he considers it more akin to a curse. To avoid relying on the sword god's blessing, he set out in search of a new weapon. But this power pursued him as if mocking his efforts, taking over his body. He felt no pain, instead an incessant sensation of pure pleasure and lethargy. This curse, however, manipulated him like a puppet bound by strings. In his mind, he heard a sweet voice telling him to cut more, tear more, and destroy more. In that moment, he completely gave himself over to the voice that controlled his body. But when a Chloe screamed, mingled with a cry of desperation, he recognized a name he knew as his own, Kang Geomma. With Chloe's scream, the shattered fragments of reality before him came together. He then threw the wooden sword that had clung to him like a second skin to avoid hurting her. Moreover, he felt that if he didn't discard it then, he would lose his consciousness forever. Chloe was the girl who awakened his clouded consciousness in that moment of chaos. Since she was the one who broke the sword and caused this entire situation, he found it irritating but was grateful. He decided to forgive her, though lightly tapping her head afterward. Even so, he left quickly to prevent the sword god's blessing from awakening again. Our hero then wonders if he will be able to live avoiding this problem forever. This blessing is a talent similar to a curse, manifesting as a trade-off for his life. It was a talent that he would have to carry forward, thrown into this world as an alien existence. Kang Geomma couldn't expect much from this place. Despite all this, our swordsman hero only wanted to live a normal life. The protagonist also believed he could handle problems as they arose. Outside the Geomma Academy, the sky turns black and lightning begins to strike. While this happens, Kang Geomma, worried, climbs the stairs toward his room. However, he only realized something now as he looked up with heavy dark circles under his eyes. He realized at that moment that there was something inside his body trying to suppress his reason. He noticed that it wasn't a blessing, but a curse that wanted to consume him completely, and that this curse worked like a forbidden and secret technique. 3 days then pass, and we see a normal day in Kang Geomma's routine in his class. A student tells Chloe that she should have gone to an amazing event the day before. After saying she will look into it later, the girl begins to look thoughtful. Since that day during training, Kang Geomma had not appeared in the classroom for 3 days. Chloe looks at his empty desk with discomfort and questions in her mind. Thinking about it now, she realizes she doesn't even have his contact information and wonders why she never asked before. She went to his dorm and knocked on the door, but all she heard were groans of pain. Reflecting now, she feels worried about Geomma after hearing him in pain in his room. Fearing that he might hate her now, Chloe decided not to break down the door and walked away. She says she liked watching him lost in his thoughts during classes, with his hand on his chin. Chloe can't even say how many times she observed him secretly in a single day. Afraid that he would think she was a strange girl, she was cautious even when talking to him. At first, she thought she had fallen in love with him when he threw himself to save her. However, she considers the alternative that she might just be making excuses. She whispers aloud that she misses Kang Geomma. The next day, the Joachim Academy is still under a gray sky and black clouds. The Mohawk professor of the dragon class yells at his students to be quiet. He asks if, by any chance, the prestigious students of this school don't know how to keep silent. Due to the forecast of heavy rain, training sessions were canceled and replaced with self-study. The professor notices that Geomma is absent again and thinks there must be a reason. All he can do as an educator is believe and wait for the student to return. All the students shout in agreement with the self-study activity assigned by the professor. Suddenly, someone enters in the middle of the class, and the professor gets irritated, yelling at the person. However, upon noticing who it is, he immediately stops yelling and looks shocked, wide-eyed. At this moment, the entire classroom goes silent and watches as Kang Geomma descends the stairs. With one slow step at a time, Kang walks down the stairs with a serious expression on his face. Our protagonist appears with a white streak in his hair. Chloe is completely surprised and in shock, calls out to Geomma. The student from the wolf class, Kang, apologizes to his professor for being late. The professor softens his tone, forgives the student for being late, and asks him to take his seat. Whispering, the students wonder if he is the special admission student. Other students then comment that he looks more handsome with his new appearance. The wolf classroom is taken over by a sepulchral silence as Kang Geomma takes his seat. Sitting his usual spot, Kang Geomma quietly starts attending the lecture. All the wolf class students get up, starving during the break, and head to the cafeteria. Chloe approaches the protagonist cautiously and calls out to him, to which he responds as usual. Sad, the girl asks if something happened to him, and Kang replies that nothing happened. She asks if he skipped classes because of their duel and says she was worried. Our hero has a serious and empty expression and shows no reaction or response. Thanking her for her concern, he replies that he only caught a cold. Chloe, not expecting this answer, is completely shocked and fails to hide it. Suspicious, she says she's happy to see him well, and Kang notices her suspicion. In recent days, he had been struck by extreme withdrawal that left his mind exhausted. He locked himself in his room without eating under the bed, praying for the convulsions to stop. This is the price he paid for using too much force while holding a damaged weapon. He overcame the agony he had experienced earlier in an expressive way. However, that wasn't all after all. He also saw something change in his reflection in the mirror. The facial structure was the same, but his expression was very cold and his hair had turned white. He realizes this is the penalty of the cursed blessing from the god of the sword. Reflecting now, Kang imagines that Chloe must be feeling guilty about their training. After all, the last person who saw him and trained with him was the red-haired girl. Seeing how fragile she looks, he feels the need to reassure Chloe. To make amends, Kang Geomma suggests they have the dinner they had planned earlier. The girl asks if he is serious and if they are really going to have dinner together. Kang says it's true, but he wants to eat something Chloe prepares, and she's happy with his request. Noticing the girl jumping for joy, Kang feels good seeing that she is genuinely happy. Saying she will do her best, Chloe also says she will cook everything Kang likes to eat. Geomma says he would like to eat fish since the last time he ate it was at her dormitory. He says he vomited it all and that it was very expensive, so he never ate it again. Suddenly, our protagonist feels a chill and a shiver down his spine. Looking towards some plants, he senses a strange feeling he can't understand. Quickly turning his face toward the direction of this mysterious sensation. Chloe also turns her head along with Kang and asks what is going on. In the corner, they see a red-haired man wearing a mask observing them talking. Nox Auditor watches with a macabre smile and a malevolent expression beneath the mask. Upon seeing her brother in the corner of the gym observing them, Chloe expresses genuine fear. Our protagonist notices Chloe's expression and asks if she knows this man. Waiting for her response and suspecting bad intentions from the man, Kang stays alert. Leaning against a pillar, Nox Auditor observes the two from the darkness of the hall. The two stare at each other silently with penetrating and stern looks. Confronting the red-haired boy, Kang Geomma tells him to just say whatever he has to say, and tells him to stop just standing there staring. With vibrant, shimmering reddish eyes, Nox Auditor continues to observe. Kang wonders what kind of strange gaze this is, and Chloe tells him not to worry about it. Shouting, the girl yells at her brother, saying she told him not to come and bother her. She yells, asking why he came there, and Kang Geomma now understands that they are siblings. The hero notices that, no matter how aggressive her tone is, he perceives her voice trembling with fear. Looking Kang up and down, Chloe's brother says he doesn't seem strong. Nox comments that Chloe broke the Auditor rules to be with someone like him. Facing her brother directly, Chloe says that whether she is Auditor or not, she doesn't care anymore. Nox says that the blood on her hands cannot be washed away and that she is forever a subject of the Auditor. Kang notices that she talks as if she belongs to a subculture, and Nox speaks like he's in a historical drama. Nox demands Chloe abandon the commoner Kang and return to the Auditor family. Biting her lips in repressed rage, Chloe denies everything he is asking for. The girl screams extremely loudly, telling her brother not to call Kang a commoner again. Geomma reflects that this hostility is very strong and that it's a good thing everyone else went out to eat. He also reflects that he's already used to this kind of situation, but he notices something. He vaguely recalls the Auditor, a shadowy group that appears in the middle of the game. He also remembers that the Auditor are specialists in infiltration and elimination of people. He has heard that in direct combat they are defeated by other historical families. However, in ambushes and stealth situations, no one surpasses them. After all, they subject their children to training close to torture to turn them into elimination tools. Our protagonist knows that all members of the Auditor family from Sicily are very strong. The realization hits our hero, and he understands that Chloe is part of the Auditor family. He then reflects on whether it's normal for a member to walk around with their face unmasked. Thinking about Nox, he notices that he is the type who eliminates without hesitation or remorse, and that he already seems very accustomed to eliminating people. It makes sense, after all, the family must be identifying and eliminating internal enemies to maintain order. Kang also doesn't have an aversion to necessary eliminations. They can even be justified. Snapping out of his thoughts back to reality, he notices that Chloe is very distressed. Kang, seeing Chloe inflict pain on herself, realizes that she just wanted to live a normal life, just as he wanted the same, but is prevented by the blessing of the sword. Chloe is cursed by her family of assassins who do not allow her to have a normal life. A life like a machine that keeps eliminating people without emotion is cruel. Kang recognizes that he is not a hero, nor does he want or can become one. Even though he cannot save the world, perhaps he can help save the life of one girl. Thus, Kang Geomma steps forward, leaves Chloe behind him, and says he will talk to Nox. He has no choice but to admit that despite everything, the blessing does not allow him to be defeated. Our protagonist states again that her brother's name is Nox Auditor. In the end, Kang tried to escape the blessing of the god of the sword, but he couldn't, similar to a phrase he once read in a manga, who said there is no paradise to escape to. So he declares that if he cannot escape this curse, he will move forward and face it, saying with conviction that his name is Kang Geomma, using the characters for sword and demon. Moving forward, he tells Nox to follow him and says he will end him. He also declares with conviction that he is a swordsman. In the teacher's lounge, we see the orange-mohawked professor from the wolf class. About Kang, he notices that something has changed in the boy, and the emotions on his face seem worn out. An overly excited girl enters the teacher's room and says that his bald head is shining. Irritated, the professor says he doesn't like it when she makes fun of his baldness, and she apologizes. Woobin answers a call on his phone and comments on something about a subspace. Shocked, Woobin asks who the student was that requested the subspace and their opponent. The person on the other end of the line says that Kang requested it, and the opponent is Nox Auditor. Suddenly, we see a large door opening, and a bright light shines from the other side. A scoreboard displays the two opponents from the wolf class who will face each other, and a timer. Kang reflects on the remaining time for the duel in the subspace and says it was easy to request it. Director Media told Geomma that if he really wanted to do this, he should be careful. However, since it is outside the jurisdictions of reality intervention, there might be psychological damage. Our protagonist does not care about this as long as he wins the fight against Nox. The noise reaches the waiting room, and even knowing it's good to watch fights, he didn't expect this reaction. Even Kang, until recently, did everything not to be noticed, but his efforts were in vain. Suddenly, Chloe appears in tears and calls out for Kang Geomma. The protagonist reinforces that this duel is not because of her and tells her not to worry. Furthermore, he thanks her for lending him her kitchen knife for his possession. Chloe sits beside Kang Geomma on the stone bench in the subspace waiting room. She tries to warn the protagonist that her brother possesses impressive strength. Our cursed swordsman says that Chloe's strength is enough. She tries to warn him that her brother is a genius with unparalleled talent in the Auditor family. Especially when it comes to wielding hidden weapons, he has no competitors. At the age of 14, Nox was already called the pinnacle of knight techniques. Our protagonist finds this name utterly ridiculous and wonders why such names are given. When he thinks more about it, he realizes it has always been this way and he has no other choice but this one. He recalls his cooking master saying he was destined to wield a knife for the rest of his life. Not even God could have expected Kang to wield a sashimi knife in this second life. The director announces that the cadets involved must proceed to the training field. Kang Geomma wields his two kitchen knives and heads toward the subspace arena. Chloe seems extremely worried and distressed about this duel between the two. Our protagonist looks at Chloe before entering the arena and catches her attention. He tells the girl that in this world, there are many geniuses. Brandishing his sashimi-cutting knife, he says that even so, in the end, he will emerge victorious. Thus, he turns and bids farewell to Chloe with the knife she lent him in hand. He begins to walk toward the arena entrance, which emits a strong, blinding light. The light is so blinding that he has to shield his eyes with the back of his hand. Finally, our protagonist steps into the training field in the subspace. Several academy students shout for Kang, cheering for him to win the duel. They say they have been waiting for a fight like this for a long time. Kang Geomma begins to feel like a gladiator from the Roman Empire era. He didn't think the duel between them would turn out this way. Suddenly, a hand from the game points to a specific person in the audience. He notices that the star class is there to watch the duel in honor of the two fighters. This includes the protagonist of the game, whom Kang says is very handsome, and Abel von Nibelung. The granddaughter of the great Siegfried watches the fight with attention and focus. Kang Geomma wonders if they don't have anything better to do, and it makes him uncomfortable. With a malicious and insane expression, Nox's auditor asks if Kang is trying to mess with him. Nox says that an illegitimate son cannot distinguish bravery from arrogance. He also questions how Kang Geomma dares wield that ordinary blade which belongs to her. With both knives still sheathed in his hands, Nox exudes a malevolent aura. Kang Geomma notices Nox's auditor's bloodlust and realizes he's insane. Our protagonist says that a true sword master does not blame his weapon. Cursing Geomma, Klo's brother tells him to watch his insolent tongue. Then he draws his sword while emanating a sinister aura and says he'll cut his tongue off. Kang Geomma notices that Nox is relying on better equipment. He also observes the sword Nox is using, an S-rank weapon called the Hongryun sword. In fact, Nox is wielding 2 Hongryun swords worth 12 million each. Additionally, he's using the Raven's Blessing, the most powerful stealth ability in history. Kang Geomma feels that Nox just suppressed his killing intent with that blessing. Realizing the use of S-rank weapons, the protagonist decides to fight seriously. Kang Geomma has 1 sashimi knife from Daixo and a rose knife from Klo of unknown rank. The two stand face to face with their weapons in hand, ready for the duel. At this moment, it is announced that the subspace veil will open, and everyone watches the fight attentively. The directors wish for the hero's blessings to be with them. As they say this, Nox and Kang rush forward and attack each other with their weapons. Kang Geomma's pain resistance blessing activates automatically. At the moment he unsheathes his knives, the sword god's blessing also manifests. When he charges at Nox with both knives, it is wished that the blessing be on his side. The students begin talking among themselves, asking if anyone saw anything in the duel. They comment that they couldn't see anything because of the speed of the two fighters. They are surprised because they thought it was a fight between 2 weak students. Various slashes and power-infused thrusts are exchanged by both sides in the duel. Nox charges aggressively at Kang Geomma with wide, possessed eyes. The students from the Star class comment that the two are incredibly fast. Abel von Nibelung remarks that Kang, who seemed weak before, is now fighting very well. Nox uses his 2 S-rank swords to unleash very powerful strikes, and Kang defends himself. Attacking aggressively and oppressively, Nox doesn't let Kang counterattack. Nox's auditor lands more strikes with his swords, trying to stab Kang Geomma. Then he uses his 2 swords to unleash attacks that emanate a purple aura. A mark forms on the ground from the attack of Nox's 2 swords, creating an X. Seeing that Kang escaped this attack, Nox becomes irritated and wants to see if he can dodge again. Nox's auditor uses the 3 Raven Steps technique and zigzags toward Kang. At this moment, after dodging other strikes, Geomma is startled and fears he won't dodge this one. Around our protagonist, 3 purple energy pillars form, seemingly trapping Kang. Seeing Nox's face mirror in front of him behind the energy pillars, he screams that the fight is over. However, before being hit by this special technique, Kang activates a blue aura and dodges. Nox's reaction is one of genuine astonishment at his opponent's ability to dodge everything. Kang Geomma dodges and stands a few meters in front of his enemy, imbued with a blue aura. Our hero shoots a sharp gaze at his enemy, trying to instill fear. One of the students says he's watching the fight and feels like Kang is just running away while Nox dominates. Abel disagrees and says he can see the entire fight and notices the difference between them. No matter how many attacks Nox is throwing, Kang is dodging all of them with ease. Irritated, Nox's auditor realizes that Klo is right and Geomma is not an ordinary student. To annihilate his enemy, he used the Raven's Blessing and Geomma dodged as if it was nothing. Seeing that he was too focused on speed, Nox decides to be more cautious now, and he says he will try to aim for a powerful strike that will cut through a wide area all at once. Nox comments that the more he looks at the kitchen knife used by Kang, the more irritated he becomes. Suddenly, while Nox grows irritated at the knife, Geomma lets it go, dropping it to the ground. The enemy wonders why Kang discarded his weapon in the middle of the battle. Very frustrated with Kang Geomma, he loudly asks what he is plotting. At that moment, our protagonist grabs Klo's knife with both hands. He wields it, holding the knife with rose engravings in front of his body. Kang Geomma plants his feet and torso firmly on the ground in a combat stance, while glaring at his enemy with a precise and cruel gaze, ready to launch his attack. Nox's auditor perceives this combat stance as an insult and provocation from Kang. Irritated, he calls his opponent a bastard of no origin, playing useless tricks. Consumed by rage, Nox activates his sinister aura and black raven wings appear on him. With the dark aura surrounding him, he energizes his swords and imbues them with black energy, declaring that he will finish Kang Geomma with just a single strike. With glowing red eyes, Nox says that in the face of the Hongryun sword imbued with energy. However, before he can finish his sentence, Kang Geomma vanishes, leaving marks on the ground. Nox's auditor is completely shocked by the sudden disappearance of his opponent. At an extremely high speed, Kang Geomma prepares to attack. The hero affirms again in his thoughts that he just wanted to live a comfortable life, saying he didn't want to draw attention or alter the original story. Then he recalls the fact that he is cursed by the blessing that haunts and dominates his body, something that tries to consume him little by little from the inside out, and he says he gave in to it. He then declares that if he can't escape, he will cut his enemy in half. Suddenly, we see one of Nox's arms, holding the Hangryun sword, flying through the air. Living a sort of nightmare, Nox Auditor cannot believe what just happened. Seeing the absence of one of his limbs, he remarks that he didn't see any of it coming. Imbued with a powerful blue aura, Geomma rushes past Nox with a decisive strike. All the more experienced students watch Nox defeat in shock and silence. The protagonist of the game's universe also watches silently, with wide eyes. We see the path Kang took with a single rush to strike Nox with precision. He comments that whether it's a blessing or a curse, he will make good use of it. Geomma's eyes appear to be consumed by a dark and ominous aura. At that moment, he bids farewell to his possible peaceful future, which will no longer happen. Without his arm, Nox Auditor stares at him from the ground in complete shock, unsure how to react. We then see the zigzag path our protagonist took to reach Nox for the precise strike, and the complete shock reaction of Auditor as he loses his limb. Finally, to end the fight, our hero makes Nox Auditor lose his head, literally. At that moment, the fight ends and the subspace curtain is deactivated. The massive black curtain separating the subspace from reality is then torn apart. All the students watch the end of the fight in a sepulchral silence, shocked by what they saw. Back in reality, Nox Auditor falls to his knees on the ground, holding one of his swords, unharmed. Meanwhile, our protagonist sheathes his sashimi knife back into its scabbard. The students of the Star class, including Abel von Nibelung, watch this scene in shock. With his back to his enemy, Geomma assumes a posture of superiority and strength. The end of the subspace duel is announced, and Kang wonders if this reaction from people is normal. Reflecting internally, our hero acknowledges that there's no turning back now after what he has done. Using a knife meant for cutting fish, it's deeply unpleasant for Kang to cut people. Kang's only consolation is that both the situation with the twins and Nox happened in the subspace. Seeing Nox trembling on the ground, he remarks that the performance in the subspace is reliable. Nox Auditor, wide-eyed, starts sweating cold and trembling after the fight. Just as Klo told Geomma, his opponent Nox was indeed strong. He has a combat sense that seems to come from multiple real-life experiences. However, when you emit so much killing intent, it becomes possible to evade as everything is visible. Then it is announced in the arena by a magical crystal that the winner is the first-year student from the Wolf class. With the fight lasting around 30 seconds, the winner was Geomma from the Wolf class. The students around comment on how a first-year student defeated a second-year and call him a prodigy. And our protagonist realizes that this created blatant publicity for him. With a slight smile on his face, he remarks that this is the path he chose to follow. Kang has a phrase in his mind telling him to endure with malice and strength. In the hallways, the academy students comment that the defeated student was an auditor, hence his strength. They then talk about how Kang's strength must be extraordinary to have defeated someone from the auditor family. In the classrooms, the topic becomes Geomma, and everyone starts talking about him. Abel von Nibelung in her star classroom begins to reflect and think about Geomma after learning his name. Everywhere in the academy, people talk about what happened the previous day, as it was quite shocking. She recalls her shock reaction at the moment Nox lost his arm. From that point onward, not even she could keep up with her eyes. After all, it was such an unreal and surreal sword fight, and all of it with just 2 kitchen knives. Being the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, she has knowledge but lacked discernment. Seeing that he possesses so much strength even with those 2 small knives impresses Abel. During class, as Abel Nibelung reflects, she feels her heartbeat changing. She starts remembering the dialogue she had with Kang about the person who defeated her, and how he seemed weak and how her family's motto was to be merciful to the weak and severe to the strong. Remembering her conversation with him about who would be first place, she concludes it's him. Frustrated, she realizes that he is the first place and stronger than her, and she starts to feel angry at Kang. She slams her hands on the desk and yells, asking what he was thinking when he talked to her. One of the students in the Star class wakes up from a deep sleep and asks what's going on. With a gentle expression, Abel Nibelung tells Rachel that nothing is happening and apologizes. She makes up an excuse, saying she's feeling stiff for not exercising the past few days. Rachel notices from her expression that she's hiding something, but Abel insists that she isn't. Then her blonde friend asks if she's hungry, and Abel says she isn't. Rachel asks if she forgot her weapon, and she replies coldly and curtly that she didn't. Bombarding Abel with questions, she asks if she needs to use the bathroom, and Abel says it's not that. Rachel mischievously asks if she got herself a boyfriend, and Abel becomes embarrassed by the question. Completely red with embarrassment, Abel Nibelung can barely respond, and Rachel laughs at her. Laughing, her friend says she thought Abel was immune to love, but now realizes she's just an ordinary woman. Abel von Nibelung tries to preserve her tough image and begins denying it's true. With her stomach hurting from laughing so hard, Rachel asks who the man is that she's interested in. She adds that if he managed to steal Abel's heart, he must not be just anyone. Rachel asks if it's Leon and comments that, at the very least, he has a handsome face. Abel Nibelung replies coldly that she is not in love with him. Her friend notices that Abel has been strangely hostile toward Leon ever since he arrived at the academy. She wonders if it's that special student from the training field the day before. Rachel then asks if it's the black-haired boy, and Abel turns around completely embarrassed. Realizing she got it right, her friend smiles and says her accuracy rate is high today. Grabbing Abel's hand, she says they should go, and Abel asks where they are going. Her friend says there's no other place to go but the wolf class. The two friends arrive at the wolf class, and Rachel asks for a moment of their attention. All the students in the wolf class are shocked and stop what they're doing upon seeing the two. The students stare and comment that they are the second and fourth ranked students in the school, Rachel and Abel. While Abel asks to leave, Rachel pulls her by the arm toward Kang's desk. Rachel climbs onto the highest desk in the classroom to look for the black-haired boy. The student who sits at the highest desk comments that it's rude to stand on someone's desk like that. Rachel charms the student, asking him to let it slide, and he becomes infatuated with her. Abel von Nibelung feels embarrassed and places her palm on her forehead. Rachel from the star class finds Kang Geomma sleeping at his desk with Chloe by his side. She wonders if the redhead next to him is his girlfriend and comments that it doesn't matter, saying it's even better that way. Walking down the stairs toward Kang Geomma, the blonde says this will be fun. Chloe smiles at Kang Geomma as she tries to get his attention, but he seems bored. When Rachel appears, Chloe's shocked and widens her eyes at her, seeing the blonde-haired girl approaching Kang Geomma. Chloe turns pale as she watches Rachel, from the star class, flirt with the boy she's in love with. Abel von Nibelung has the same reaction, feeling ashamed as she witnesses the scene. Flirting openly with our protagonist, Rachel catches his attention. Just waking up, Geomma is still confused and drooling, unable to understand what's going on. Standing on his desk, Rachel asks kindly and charmingly if he's awake. Then she asks if his name is Kang Geomma, as she didn't notice the day before. Kang Geomma wonders what Rachel, from the star class, is doing in front of him. She says that seeing him up close, he's quite handsome. Our protagonist's instincts warn him that this situation is very dangerous. Filled with anger and with a macabre look, Chloe grabs Rachel's hand and asks what she wants. Chloe's eyes are consumed by jealousy and rage, turning a reddish hue. The girl, clearly hitting on Kang Geomma, is confused and doesn't respond. Seeing Chloe's possessive reaction, our hero realizes his sense of danger was for this. He notices that her personality has changed again, just like it did that day at dinner. Suddenly, Chloe pulls out a box cutter from her pencil case and threatens Rachel with it. Kang is already apprehensive, fearing a knife fight might break out in the classroom. A combination he hasn't even seen in games. He wonders why this is happening. Abel pulls her friend aside and asks what she's doing in someone else's class. Rachel, manipulating the situation, says she just came to greet her peers casually. The girl tells Chloe that when adults are talking, children shouldn't interrupt. Placing her hand on Chloe's head and calling her a brat, she says kids shouldn't play with sharp objects. As Chloe raises the box cutter, Rachel says the adults will resume their conversation. Completely consumed by possessive jealousy, Chloe screams for Rachel to be eliminated and attacks her. Both Kang Geomma and Abel von Nibelung are completely shocked and widen their eyes. Rachel, who had her back turned, turns her head just before being attacked. We see tomato sauce splatter, but it's actually juice spilled by a nearby student. The two students start arguing while Rachel grabs Chloe's hand. She says Chloe is slow yet quick and easily disarms her, calling her an annoying brat. Abel von Nibelung shouts angrily at Rachel to stop what she's doing immediately. Rachel looks disinterested and throws Chloe aside in a sadistic manner. Before hitting the ground, Chloe does a somersault in the air and manages to cushion her fall effortlessly. All the students watch this fight between the girls, stunned with their mouths agape. Rachel is the legitimate heir of the brute force supremacy family. The family motto of Rachel is against overwhelming force, no technique is necessary. From the star class, Rachel Demira is the niece of the Spear Saint. She asks Kang Geomma if Chloe the brat is really his girlfriend. Our protagonist responds dryly that Chloe is not his girlfriend. He feels chills from Chloe's dark intent, but firmly states that she is not his girlfriend, and that she is just a friend, while Rachel analyzes the conversation and processes the information. Seeing three girls fighting over him, Kang Geomma wonders what's going on. Thinking about it now, he notices Abel von Nibelung is in the middle of this fight too. And with all this confusion, he hadn't even realized her presence in the room. Taking a more serious tone, our protagonist asks why the two of them came looking for him. Rachel bluntly says she heard Abel von Nibelung was interested in him and wanted to check it out. Blushing with embarrassment, Abel starts to say she never said that and claims Rachel dragged her here by force. Rachel says she thought Abel had come willingly since she neither complained nor resisted. Abel von Nibelung is shocked by Rachel's statement. The entire classroom starts gossiping about the situation with the two star class students. Abel said there was a misunderstanding and that she hadn't wanted to come to the wolf class. Our protagonist comments that she could have left before all of this happened. Kang says that if it's nothing important, it's better for the two of them to leave and return to their class. The two girls are shocked by Geomma's blunt and direct words. Rachel says he's a very interesting boy and that she likes fun guys. Kang then responds that it's good for her, but he's not a fun guy. Rachel says she disagrees and invites him to watch Netflix in her room after class. Chloe, furious and overtaken by uncontrollable jealousy, yells at the two of them to get away from Geomma. Rachel starts mocking Chloe for treating Kang Geomma as if he were her boyfriend. While Rachel laughs at Chloe, Abel Nibelung also fills with rage, emanating a blue aura. The blonde girl says it was interesting to meet Kang and that they'll see each other again soon, though he hopes not. Even in her farewell, the blonde girl flaunts her charm and Geomma wishes she'd leave his sight quickly. As the two-star class girls exit through the door, our hero immediately goes back to sleep. However, Abel Nibelung stops midway and begins to look at Kang Geomma with interest. She observes him for a few seconds while he sleeps, as if feeling something special about him. She leaves the room deep in thought, as if she's genuinely starting to like our protagonist. As she turns her back and leaves the wolf class, all the students continue gossiping. The girls hadn't expected things to turn out this way, nor that the black-haired boy would be so cold. They'd vaguely noticed something almost imperceptible in Geomma's dark and somber eyes. Rachel comments that it felt like her head might get separated from her body, and it was terrifying. She says he's different from all their classmates, who only know how to talk big. Thinking about how she only went there to provoke a little, she feels she may have gained something unexpected. Her Changsong family has been forming marriage alliances with notable warriors for generations. In this sense, Kang Geomma is undoubtedly a tempting asset. Surely this is something the unassailable Empress would find interesting. Rachel turns to her friend Abel von Nibelung and apologizes for her reckless actions. Abel says she should apologize to the students of the wolf class for the commotion, not to her. Rachel says it's not about that, and Abel, confused, asks what it's about. She says she won't give up on Kang Geomma and that she wants him for herself. Nox Auditor wakes up in the Jokum Academy hospital and starts saying he's going to eliminate Kang. After all, he lived his entire life undefeated, only to be beaten by a nobody. He wonders if things would have been different if the fight had taken place at night, and plans a surprise attack to eliminate him. Thinking about Kang, he can't contain his hatred and repeats that he wants to kill him thousands of times. He leaves the medical wing with his IV stand, pushing other patients out of his way. Nox plans to summon the Auditor, believing that with the strength of the entire clan, they can eliminate Kang. Nox wants to kill the boy and bring Chloe back to the Auditor family. After all, Chloe's potential is equal to or greater than his, and he knows he can't let her remain free. Leaving the hospital, he wants to carry out this plan immediately with the family's power and his night technique. He wants to make something clear to Kang, but his hatred and killing intent are suddenly suppressed. Just as he's about to leave the medical wing, he sees his mortal enemy sitting right in front of him. Sitting on a bench eating an apple, Kang says good evening to Nox Auditor. Back in the wolf class, Chloe Auditor is biting her nails with growing anxiety. Our hero notices she's upset and distant, but he recalls that it wasn't Rachel who drew the blade. It was Chloe. Still holding the blade in her hand and harboring murderous intent, Chloe mutters obsessively. Cursing the older girls from the star class, she's interrupted when Kang calls her attention. She quickly changes her expression, becoming sweet again, and asks if Kang needs something. Our hero asks Chloe Auditor how her brother Nox is doing. After a few moments of silence, she decides to say he's in the Academy's medical wing. Then Kang asks why he's in the medical wing since it's impossible to get injured in the subspace. She doesn't know how to explain it because she hasn't visited him. She only heard he was hospitalized despite having no injuries. Chloe says her brother is probably fine and asks Kang not to worry about him. Even though Kang defeated Nox in the duel, he knows Nox is not weak enough to be traumatized. He hopes that Bastard isn't planning anything else in the medical wing. Our protagonist asks Chloe to tell him where Nox's room is in the medical wing. Following the tutorial he saw in a video about dealing with Yanders, he pats her head. Back in the medical wing, Nox Auditor collapses at the sight of Kang Geomma in front of him. Our protagonist asks his rival if he can eat his apple. Nox finds the question from the special admission student strange since he's already eating the fruit. The hero notices the wealth of the Auditor family, considering how enormous this room is for just one person. Nox Auditor asks the protagonist how he managed to enter his room. Silent, the hero reaches for a small knife and Nox imagines he's about to finish where he started. Still not saying a word, Kang Geomma takes the small knife into his hands. He starts peeling the apple while his enemy feels a sense of relief. The enemy wonders why Kang is peeling the apple so skillfully. Our hero finishes peeling the apple and places it on a plate next to a basket of fruit. Leaving the room, the protagonist tells Nox Auditor to eat the fruits he left behind. Irritated by the gesture, Nox doesn't understand how Kang dares to pity him. Meanwhile, under his hospital gown, the boy pulls out a hidden blade that slides into his hand. He knows that if he acts immediately, he can eliminate his enemy, Geomma. However, before he can act, Kang Geomma warns him that if he seeks revenge, he will annihilate the entire Auditor family if Nox tries anything at that moment. Hearing his mortal enemy threaten his family, Nox is left in complete shock. After saying this, our protagonist slams the medical wing door shut. Meanwhile, the apple Kang Geomma peeled perfectly emits a strange aura. It splits open by itself, and the Auditor boy, startled, falls clumsily to the floor. Walking alone at night in Joachim Academy, our hero begins to reflect. Nox is now like a candle that can be blown out and extinguished at any moment. It seems that after the threats, his vengeful desires have been completely suppressed, thanks to Kang Geomma's bravado-filled intimidation, which worked very well. The protagonist admits that the Auditors are an incredible group of assassins in this world. He knows there's no way to face an entire family with just 30 seconds of pain nullification. although he could probably take down at least 10 people in 30 seconds. However, all this is considering the worst-case scenario, as he must avoid killing so many people. Reflecting, Kang Geomma observes the full moon illuminating the silent sky. In a way, he feels as though he's at the center of a peculiar storm. Recalling all the recent chaotic events, he says he's starting to get used to it all. Kang knows everything will be fine if Nox doesn't try anything else, and he no longer needs to worry about him. However, he knows he still needs to deal with Rachel, the girl he so wanted to avoid. In the original game, Rachel approaches the protagonist and later gets attacked after Abel does too. But he decides to think about this more carefully, as he needs to prepare for the midterm exams. Kang plans to take this seriously because a reward is a reward. He knows the prize is in Murasame, and he needs a weapon that lasts longer than 30 seconds. Looking at his calendar now, he notices the exams will take place at the end of the week. The test involves subjugating a demonic monster in groups of 5, regardless of class. Individual skill is important, but trust in teammates is essential, which makes teamwork necessary. Even though this is an annoying test, it'll be beneficial if he finds the right teammates. The protagonist knows that depending on the player's level, the game can become very tedious. With the right teammates, you can be carried by them and level up faster. In addition, the demonic monster presented in this test is the merman, a D-rank monster. It already seems super disgusting in the game, but now we'll see the merman in real life, and it looks worse. Although he's used to seeing fish at work, he thinks he might vomit upon seeing this monster. If they were mermaids, at least it would be pleasant to see them in person. However, in this case, Kang Geomma thinks he'd have a nosebleed out of joy seeing mermaids. Thinking about this, he remembers that in the game, mermaids are considered demonic humans. This is the main strength of demons, the demon humans. Compared to demon humans, demon monsters are nothing more than guard dogs. Since only Tritons are being subdued, this means students won't have to deal with demon humans. Reflecting on the entire month since his arrival, Kang notices that the nights have been peaceful. Looking up at the starry night sky, illuminated only by the full moon, Kang feels inner peace. Kang thinks about how it's been 700 years since the peace treaty between humans and demons was sealed. Just like human history in the game, there were also wars and smaller conflicts. For instance, Vasman, who was the commander of the 6th Legion half a century ago. Vasman claimed he would revive the commander of the 1st Demon Legion, and so he crossed the line of the truce oath between humans and demons. With his fists, Vasman vowed to bring Lord Lycan back, while heroes tried to stop him. The hero Siegfried, still in his youth, faced Vasman with his sword, and after a week of battles bathed in a sea of blood, the humans emerged victorious. Thus, the 7 heroes of humanity were born, though 3 sacrifices were made to achieve this feat. Neither side wished to escalate this conflict further. Meanwhile, the cook comments about Sieg being the strongest human after defeating the 6th commander. And so the story of the game continues, stating that after these events, peace reigned until now. Kang Geomma, gazing at the starry sky at night, wonders if this is truly peace. The more he thinks about it, he recalls Valor Draken, who sealed the 1st Legion commander by himself. He can't help but question whether Valor Draken is truly human given his achievements. He also mentions that only 3 years remain until the second war between humans and demons, and one of the fighters in this great war will be the Demon King himself. However, thinking about it won't change the facts, so he decides to focus on the midterm exams. As irritating as it is, Kang Geomma realizes he needs to find some teammates first. Yet, looking through his contact list on his phone, he notices he doesn't have any friends. Reflecting on this, he finds it strange as he's currently the most famous student at the school. Kang wonders if he should use this to his advantage to solve his lack of friends. Oh well, he's already managed to live 3 years at Joaquin Academy without drawing attention. He seems determined to find a good group of teammates and perform well in the midterm exams. Kang shifts his goal from living peacefully in comfort to living without peace but still comfortably. A week passes, and in the Wolf class, several students continue to ignore Kang. Our protagonist feels worthless as no one invited him to be part of a group. He then remembers when he cruelly defeated Nox in front of all the students. He realizes he can't do anything moderately, which is why people fear him. Then he notices that Chloe is just like him and is also considered an outcast because of the incident. Kang Geomma approaches Chloe and asks if no cadet invited her to form a team. She says she's alone, and Kang asks if she's okay, considering she used to have friends. Chloe says she's fine as long as Kang Geomma is by her side. Our hero invites Chloe Auditor to form a group with him and find 3 more people. She immediately accepts, and Kang recognizes the value of Chloe's abilities. The goal of the test is to capture as many Tritons as possible within the given time. Considering he only has 30 seconds, Chloe to him is like 1,000 soldiers. Chloe says she's excited to be part of his team, and he notices her happiness. Suddenly, the silence is broken by a female voice calling for Geomma. Rachel appears, looking for her Geomma, saying she's back to have fun while descending the stairs. Irritated, our protagonist asks Rachel why she came back, and she says it's to see him. Chloe grabs her blade and says with a jealous and furious look that the big players are coming. Kang Geomma tells Rachel to leave because he has things to do and can't pay attention to her. She asks in an intimate tone why Kang Geomma is being so cold. Annoyed, he asks her to stop addressing him in such an intimate and affectionate way. She pretends to be deaf and not hear him so she doesn't have to stop calling him that. Rachel shamelessly throws herself onto his desk, saying she accidentally fell next to him. Lying on the protagonist's desk, she asks if he has a group for the task. Our hero dryly responds that he doesn't, and she gets excited about it. With a passionate and excited look, she tells him to join her group. With her hand on Kang Geomma's chin, the girl invites him to join her group. Quickly, Kang removes her hand from his chin and asks why she wants him in her group. Rachel responds that the other students are boring and it would be more fun to do the work with him. In a dry and cold tone, our hero says he already agreed to form a group with Chloe Auditor. She says that won't be a problem since there are 2 open spots in their group. Thus, beyond the rewards, his grades might be at risk and he despises the sin, not the sinner. Looking at Chloe, he doesn't want to commit this betrayal, but he knows his grades are on the line. Chloe waits for Kang Geomma's response, trembling and in shock. Knowing he can take Chloe with him, Kang accepts the deal and Rachel says there's no turning back now. With that information, our swordsman asks who the leader of the group is. Rachel says the leader is Leon and assumes Kang Geomma knows him since he's very famous. Hearing this, our protagonist finds it dreadful and starts lamenting. He wonders what he did so wrong in his past life to deserve this punishment now. He begins imagining a fictional scenario where he could get involved with the game's heroines. After all, he did stand out and took advantage of the consequences of that. However, because of this attention, there were also bad consequences. Kang knows that if he were Leon Reinhardt, life would be much easier for him. After all, with his pleasing brilliance, Leon is the protagonist of the game, making everything smoother. And from this point onward, Kang is uncertain about the direction his life will take. Still, he knows all responsibility will fall solely on his shoulders. Additionally, when he tried to see if he could switch groups, Rachel had already put him on the list and finalized the registration. Because of this malicious act by Rachel, Kang Geomma swears he will cut her into thousands of pieces. At that moment, Chloe appears with her ominous presence and asks if something is wrong with Kang. In a passive-aggressive tone, she points out that Kang has been acting strangely since Rachel showed up. Dodging the topic, he says he feels pressured being part of the Star Class students group. Chloe assures Kang that no one in the Star Class is stronger than him and he thanks her. It would be irresponsible for Kang to leave the group now, especially since Chloe also agreed to join. Thinking it through, he realizes the group is of celestial level and decides to view the situation positively. More optimistic, the protagonist asks what time the group meeting will begin. With disdain, Rachel says the meeting is scheduled for 6 o'clock at the cafe in the main building. Excited, Kang Geomma suggests they head to the cafe since it's almost time. The two then head to the cafe in Geomma Academy's main building. Chloe Auditor grabs a juice cup and slams it down on the table dramatically. In an exaggerated manner, she says her avocado smoothie is absolutely delicious. Our hero can't believe that this green liquid cost 50,000 won, equivalent to 200 riyas. When Kang Geomma tastes his coffee, he finds it bitter and spits it out. However, he pretends to enjoy it to appear dignified and show the palate of an adult. He had ordered an espresso for 10,000 won, but it was so bitter that he regrets the purchase. Since it was charged to his employee card, he decides never to return to this cafe. Suddenly, his phone starts ringing and vibrating from notifications. He sees messages from Rachel asking where he is and finally saying she has found them. The cafe door opens and Rachel enters accompanied by Leon Reinhardt. She apologizes for being late and asks if they've been waiting long. Our protagonist looks at Leon from bottom to top as if he were a deity. Kang Geomma looks confused at a boy with orange hair accompanying the group. The orange-haired boy with an A tattoo on his neck glances around as if searching for something. Meanwhile, our hero starts wondering if this boy is a delinquent. Leon Reinhardt, looking down at him, greets Kang Geomma with a handshake. Extending his hand politely, our protagonist introduces himself to the game's protagonist. The game's protagonist comments that the subspace duel between Nox and Kang was great to watch. He concludes by saying it's reassuring to have Kang Geomma as a teammate. Our hero internally remarks with a sense of strangeness that Leon is the protagonist he played as. In Geomma Academy's cafe, they all serve themselves iced coffees. Leon asks if they should start with introductions and Rachel, excited, says they should. Introducing himself as the leader of the group, he says his name is Leon von Reinhardt. Admitting he's inexperienced, he doesn't know how he became the leader and hopes to rely on them during the tests. Observing Leon, our protagonist feels a bit envious of his appearance and remarks that life is unfair. Rachel says everyone already knows her, so she'll skip her introduction, which irritates the orange-haired boy. He then decides to introduce himself, saying he's from the Dragon class and his name is Speed Weapon. Showing a tattoo on his neck with the word hero, he says he likes heroes. Kang expected more from the orange-haired boy's name, or at least an explanation behind it. The fact that he likes heroes also challenges many prejudices in this world. Chloe introduces herself timidly, saying she's from the Wolf class and an auditor. When she mentions that she joined the group at Geomma's recommendation, Rachel starts mocking her. At that moment, Chloe gets irritated and glares intimidatingly at Rachel. Chloe continues her sentence, thanks Kang Geomma, and says it's a pleasure to be part of the group. The other group members don't seem very pleased with Chloe's introduction. Our protagonist introduces himself as Kang Geomma and says he's from the same class as her. Sensing an awkward atmosphere, our hero watches as Leon takes something out of his bag. Taking out his notebook and typing a few things, Leon says it's time to start working. From his computer, a hologram appears and a 3D map is projected in front of them. He explains that the head instructor distributed a file to each group leader. This file contains the holographic map of Scopuli Island, where they'll take their test this time. On the test day, they'll travel to this island through a subspace portal. However, only the portal is in subspace. The island itself is a real space. This makes the mission more dangerous since they can get hurt by beasts and must be careful. Leon tells them to take a closer look and zooms in on the map of Scopuli Island. He shows that the northeastern beach area is designated for their group's test. Including their group, 3 other groups will hunt fishmen in this area. The key point of this task is to see which group can eliminate the most beasts, knowing the number is limited. All the group members seem very focused on the mission they have to accomplish. The group leader, Leon, asks if anyone has any questions after his explanation. Speed mentions that the island is also known for the appearance of mermaids and asks if they should be concerned. Leon says the inspectors have already conducted a preliminary check, so they can rest assured in that regard. Chloe asks if there can be fights between groups assigned to the same area. With the objective focused on hunting beasts, cadets who fight among themselves will likely be disqualified. Kang Geomma becomes concerned about members of a family of assassins. Liam concludes the meeting and tells them to prepare for the midterm tests tomorrow. While the others leave, Speed Weapon and Rachel start arguing over trivial matters. Leon Reinhardt puts away his notebook and Kang Geomma senses something strange and decides to leave. Just as he gets up to leave, Leon stops him and calls his attention to something. Our hero pauses what he's doing and gives his attention to Leon von Reinhardt. Liam asks where Kang Geomma came from, and the two stare at each other in silence for a moment. Kang feels like he's been asked this question before, but now it feels fundamentally different. There seems to be malice or deeper knowledge in Leon's gaze as he asks the question. Kang is confused by Leon's look and wonders if he's asking geographically or otherwise. Realizing that Leon asked this question after everyone else left, he senses there's something behind it. It's then that our swordsman hero wonders if Leon knows his secret about his origins. Leon apologizes for asking such a question and says he thought Kang looked like him. Our hero doesn't exactly understand what he means by that. There is a distinction in the nationalities of the Academy members, and it's clear Kang is Korean. The game's protagonist says it's better to pretend this question never existed. At that moment, Leon von Reinhardt quickly decides to leave. However, our hero grabs him by the shoulder and asks him to wait for a moment. Geomma repeats Leon's question, asking where he came from as well. Kang feels bad for grabbing him, but he wouldn't have been able to sleep with this strange feeling. Leon, with a friendly smile, grabs our protagonist's hand and says he's from Germany. With a strange attitude, he suddenly turns and leaves, leaving Kang puzzled. Bothered by what happened earlier, our hero has difficulty eating and focusing. He wonders if he was wrong because at that moment he thought Leon might also be reincarnated. After all, there's no rule saying he is the only one who came from another world and reincarnated here. Moreover, since Leon is the protagonist of the game, it makes more sense than being an extra like Kang. When under the effect of the blessing of the god of the sword, his senses become sharper. He then decides to try something, unsheathing the sashimi knife and activating the sword blessing. Closing his eyes, he focuses on his core to activate the blessing of the god of the sword. The response he wanted appears in his mind, confirming that Leon is a being of this world. Kang Geomma is startled, widening his eyes at this response about the protagonist. Just like last time, when he focuses on the blessing, he can hear voices. When he tries to delve deeper into his thoughts, he feels a headache that pain resistance doesn't nullify. Regardless, the appearance of Leon today is exactly how Kang remembers him from the game. Not even hiring an actor could replicate Leon Reinhardt's personality. Kang wonders if Leon was genuinely asking about nationality or something deeper. But when Leon said he thought they were alike, it left Kang incredulous. With that phrase stuck in his head, he decides to check Leon's Kimiwiki but finds no records of him. Despite feeling uneasy and suspicious, he imagines he will only talk to Leon this once and never again. If something like this happens again, Kang Geomma can turn to Media for help. He thinks about Mia's proposal for them to run away together and her complaints about how rarely he visits. Strangely, even in a situation he wants to avoid, he manages to stay calm. He wonders if this too is an effect of the blessing of the god of the sword. When he thinks about the blessing, he opens the specification screen for it. He notices progress both physically and mentally. The mental and weapon stats remain the same, but his physical stats have improved due to constant training. The weapon stat will likely change once he obtains the Murasame. One lingering question is what the assimilation rate means. It's the only stat that has significantly increased, and it seems he will soon meet the unlocking conditions. So far, everything Kang Geomma has done has been to toy with the Auditor siblings. He wonders if this is related to the assimilation rate. Kang Geomma feels frustrated by not fully understanding himself and having no one to ask about it. Suddenly, the system announces that the minimum number of blessing activations has been reached. As a result, his activation time has increased from 30 to 40 seconds, with a 12-hour cooldown. The information about the 40 seconds greatly surprises our swordsman hero. He feels that all the suffering he endured to activate the blessing for the first time was worth it. Although it's not much, Geomma feels great about these upgrades. As time passes for our protagonist, he continues his grueling training routine. Additionally, he keeps attending his group meetings for the midterm exams. During this period, Kang also trains more swordsmanship with Chloe Auditor. Rachel continues her attempts to flirt with our hero, which makes Chloe jealous. On the last day of the week, we see Kang training intensely, preparing for a run. When a droplet of water begins to fall in the training arena, he darts forward at high speed. With absolute precision, Geomma slices the droplet in half with his sashimi knife. Finally, D-Day arrives, the day of the midterm exam, and all the students position themselves in front of the subspace portal. Standing before the portal, Kang notices how the training area's atmosphere changes completely. His entire group appears, already equipped with their weapons, calling Geomma to join them. Rachel asks why Kang was late today, given that he's never late. Leon welcomes him, and we see his role as the leader in this mission. Speed Weapon will take on the support role for the mission on Scopuli Island. Meanwhile, Chloe, excited, will serve as a DPS along with Rachel. Apologizing for being late, we see that our protagonist will serve as the team's rearguard. Kang is surprised by everyone's weapons and notices Rachel has the rank as Skyflower Spear. Geomma observes that Leon still doesn't have his definitive weapon and is unsure about Speed's weapon. Seeing the flute hanging around Speed's neck, Kang wonders if it's a weapon. Rachel says that even though it looks simple, it's one of the few S-rank healing weapons. In the original game, the flute is a very difficult item to obtain even by paying millions. It was also said that appearance is part of performance, and Kang wonders why it's a flute. Getting very close to Speed Weapon, he examines the flute around his neck thoroughly. At that moment, the teacher announces that the first semester midterm tests are about to begin. Looking at the students' expressions, he concludes that they seem confident. The teacher of the wolf class says the students should already know the rules, so he'll be brief. He states that if they encounter anything dangerous, they should run without hesitation as they're students, not heroes. He doesn't want his students risking their lives for grades. If any student gets injured or wishes to withdraw, they should report to the instructor as soon as possible. Leon says the time has come, advises them to get ready, and tells them not to be nervous. Focused, Geomma prepares to start the midterm test. Chloe approaches our hero, seeming reserved and bothered by something, and Kang questions her about it. She says it's odd to worry about this now, but asks about the mermaids of Scopuli Island. Kang reaffirms that the inspectors already evaluated this before the tests began. Chloe says that in her homeland of Sicily, there were many reports of mermaids and the damage they cause. Although demons are in a truce, it's now rare to encounter demons outside dungeons. However, the persistence of these rumors indicates that the appearance of mermaids lacks clear conditions. The wolf class instructor, sporting a mohawk, yells that the portals will now be opened. The portal is then activated, and Kang places his hand on Chloe's head and tells her to enter. Content, she says there's no need to worry since Geomma is by her side, and she trusts him. The team gets ready and takes their pre-assigned positions. Chloe begins to focus and seems to hear her beloved Geomma's voice. She hears him calling her name repeatedly, until she snaps back to reality. Realizing that Kang had been shouting her name several times to get her attention, she feels disoriented. Chloe realizes she blacked out for a moment without any apparent reason, worrying Kang. The other group members mention they can't contact the instructor since they're in a cave. Seeing someone injured right in front of her, Chloe begins to panic and wonder what happened. The entire group then notices they're facing a mermaid with a demonic and disturbing appearance. Rewinding to the time before the mermaid's appearance and Chloe Auditor's blackout. The students arrive at Scopuli Island, and everyone seems nauseous from the interdimensional travel. Except for Geomma, who doesn't feel sick, and Leon says it's not just regular motion sickness. Suddenly, interrupting their conversation, a half-human, half-fish beast appears. Our hero wonders what kind of creature this is and notes that it's much smaller than he expected. He feels foolish for having taken these beasts so seriously and thinks he won't need to use his knife. Regardless, Geomma is already prepared to take the rearguard position. Leon says that if they go to the right spot, adult fishmen will appear. The Tritons are the creatures that actually give points, not these newly hatched fish. The group decides to head to where Chloe went for reconnaissance. Meanwhile, the remaining group members begin exploring the forest. Leon von Reinhardt warns Geomma to be careful with the path ahead. Suddenly, they notice Chloe approaching, descending from the trees at high speed. She lands right in front of Geomma, who asks if she came through the trees, and she nods. Leon asks about the situation on the island, and Chloe says there's a cave 500 kilometers away. They head to the cave Chloe identified and stop at its majestic entrance. Right at the cave entrance, they notice numerous eyes of creatures watching from the darkness. Dozens of beasts are gathered around a bonfire in the middle of the cave. Rachel says there appear to be between 50 and 60 creatures inside. Kang is concerned because if they eliminate them all, they'll undoubtedly secure first place. However, the group leader must consider the safety of the team members. After all, it would be problematic if someone got injured in a cave that prevents communication. They'd face the dilemma of taking the risk or searching for a safer location. The decision lies with Leon, who appears deep in thought about it. Before heading to the island, Leon outlined the entire strategy and instructed Chloe to scout the area. He ordered Speed Weapon to stay at the rear, handling healing and buffs. Kang had commented that day that it was strange for Speed to be a healer, which irritated him. Finally, Leon assigned Kang to stay at the back, keeping watch for potential enemies and guarding the rear. Leon said he would lead the team from the center, but could also participate in the attack. Rachel questioned the game's protagonist about her role. After Kang remembered Rachel's role, he noticed that Leon had already made a decision. Leon activated Rachel and ordered her to attack the monsters in the cave with her spear. She threw it with monstrous strength and incredible precision, sending it flying toward the cave. The Skyflower spear hit the creatures, causing significant damage. Later, Leon instructed Rachel to destroy everything she saw in front of her without hesitation. Confidently, she followed Leon's orders, attacking and destroying the beast's shelter. Meanwhile, Speed Weapon played his flute, activating its healing blessing through its sound. The surviving creatures, enraged by the destruction of their home, charged at the group. Rachel began attacking wildly, counting the number of creatures she eliminated. She continued her assault, nearing the halfway point of the creatures inhabiting the cave. Using the giant swing ability of her Skyflower spear, she cleared half of the monsters. Reaching the remarkable count of 25 defeated enemies, Rachel thanked Speed for the buff. The other group members were amazed by Rachel's strength and combat skills. Chloe Auditor began drawing her sword and activated the blessing of the cat. Purple lightning, matching her aura, manifested from the blade and imbued it with power. With a powerful charge and a massive slash, Chloe easily cut several monsters in half. Her eyes glowed red as she softly whispered her kill count. 8 eliminated. 2 more creatures leaped at her, aiming to devour her alive. Chloe sliced the 2 monsters before they could touch her, raising her count to 20. Rachel continued her onslaught, now defeating 45 monsters and drawing closer to Chloe. Kang and Leon watched the scene in shock, realizing that if they didn't intervene, the two would clash. The girls' gazes were wild, locked on each other in preparation for a direct confrontation. Both readied their weapons to attack each other. However, before they could strike and start a duel, a massive monster emerged from the cave. A giant abyssal fish with a gaping mouth and a lantern on its head broke through the wall. This didn't stop the 2 girls, who unsheathed their weapons and raised their arms for an attack. Without even looking at the monster, they simultaneously and effortlessly eliminated it. Rachel looked down at Chloe and commented that she had gotten faster. Chloe replied that the beast was her kill, then told the blonde to get out of her way. Kang and Geomma felt relieved, noticing that the 2 didn't end up fighting each other. Meanwhile, Leon sheathed his sword, realizing there hadn't been any real battle. Relieved, he looked at Geomma and said they had worried for nothing since nothing happened between the girls. Liam loudly announced that they had defeated all 60 monsters in the cave. He reminded the group that they must trust one another during this mission. After his brief speech, he assumed everything was settled and asked if they could leave. Kang observed Leon's decisiveness and leadership, acknowledging him as a vital pillar of the group. It seemed the statement he saw about Leon being from this world was true. Kang reflected on Leon's earlier question and concluded that there hadn't been any hidden motives. Suddenly, something flew toward one of the group members. While Kang and Geomma drifted in his thoughts, Leon was struck by something. The object pierced through his body, leaving a hole in his abdomen, startling him. All the group members watched the scene with wide eyes, panic settling in. Our hero sensed a presence directly behind him and noticed a shadow in his peripheral vision. Turning to the figure, he saw a female silhouette form in his field of view. The group panicked as Leon collapsed to the ground, destabilized by the monster's presence. They realized they were facing a powerful and malevolent demon mermaid. Rachel, shocked, questioned why a mermaid was in this place. Speed Weapon also questioned whether the instructors had properly scouted the area beforehand. Kang wonders if this is a dream, as things seem too easy to be true. Given the current situation, they must decide whether to face the monster or flee from the location. However, they risk being annihilated if they flee while carrying an injured Leon. Rachel orders the other members to try to contact an instructor and inform them about the mermaid. Speed Weapon says it won't work since communication is impossible in this area. Kang thinks that the lack of communication is causing everyone to panic. He feels that he's the only one keeping a clear head in this desperate situation. Kang tells Rachel to block the fish from entering the area at all costs. He instructs Speed Weapon to use all his healing blessings on Leon. Finally, he tells Chloe to leave, find other cadets, call for evacuation, and summon the instructors. Chloe asks what Geomma will do and says they need to get Leon out before the Tritons arrive. The girl looks at Kang and Geomma with fear and anguish, but he reassures her that everything will be fine. She obeys him and runs very fast out of the cave. Speed asks if Kang has a plan and yells at him as he begins to approach the mermaid. Standing in front of the demonic mermaid, our hero tells Speed and Rachel to handle the smaller fish. Since forever, Kang has never liked smaller fish because they lack challenge. His specialty has always been with large fish, and he starts unsheathing his knife. Just as humans have power, demons have their own power, which is called magic. Through this magic, the original game's protagonist was defeated with just one ordinary strike. This is the great power gap between humans and demons. Even with the sword god's blessing, victory is difficult to guarantee. In the original game, hunting a magic using demon without forming a group was impossible. Facing a boss designed for large group raids alone is not only challenging, but also frustrating enough to make him want to curse. In any case, our protagonist has already accepted this point of no return. He knows it will take at least 10 minutes for Chloe to return from outside. Thinking it through, Kang concludes that the only way to handle this is by using the blessing. For 40 seconds, he plans to dice this damn big fish. As he unsheathes his knife, the sense of danger he felt stabilizes. Demonstrating his determination, his mental level increases, and his words and actions gain weight. The blessing begins making the necessary adjustments to his suppressive force. Finally, the sword god's blessing manifests fully, and Kang feels ready. After all, it's been a long time since he last made a decent sashimi dish. It's wished that the sword god's blessing is by his side at this moment. Meanwhile, Rachel continues attacking smaller fish with her Heaven's Flower spear. The small fish persist in attacking fiercely. Rachel uses the shaft of her spear to avoid being bitten by the sharp-toothed monsters. Using her spear and immense strength, she pushes the monsters out of the cave. Realizing they need to be defeated, she begins to energize her spear. Attacking with her special whirlwind ability, she attempts to eliminate 3 at once. Rachel manages to accomplish this feat, but ends up very tired. Meanwhile, Speed wishes he had the ability to apply blessings beyond buffs at this moment. However, he struggles even to heal Leon von Reinhardt. After all, the wounds are very deep, but he manages to heal them. Speed reflects on Geomma, as he already knew Kang was strong because of the subspace duel. Seeing Kang and Geomma going to face the mermaid alone, Speed thinks he's crazy. Just watching this scene, Weapon feels his bones ache and considers stopping Kang. He shouts Kang's name as the demonic mermaid smiles at her target. Using her claws, the monster begins attacking our swordsman hero. Kang quickly uses his speed to charge forward and attempt a surprise attack. Kang Geomma knows this mermaid is a demon that uses water-based magic from a distance. Even without knowing magic himself, Kang knows this monster is ultimately made of bones and fish flesh. He prepares for a big leap, and when he does, he reaches the monster's height and decides to slash. Throwing his arm back after the jump, he faces the mermaid and prepares for an attack. Executing the full slashing motion, he manages to cut the mermaid's body in half. However, she remains alive and uses a tsunami magic to attack Speed Weapon. The boy finds himself desperate face to face with a demon, completely shocked. Smiling maliciously, the mermaid charges at Speed with a water-based magic attack. She lets out a piercing, deafening scream filled with rage. Before she can hit the boy, the demon mermaid is cut again, losing her tail. We see Kang Geomma delivering another precise and surgical strike to his enemy. After the attack, our hero stabilizes himself on the ground to avoid losing balance or falling. He quickly propels himself into a great leap for another charge against the creature. Mid-charge, Kang Geomma pulls his arm back, preparing for a powerful strike. However, the mermaid dodges using her water magic, and Kang realizes the fight won't be easy. Our protagonist notices that the mermaid is targeting Leon, who is injured. While protecting his fallen friend, Speed Weapon calls out to Kang. He notices Leon's wounds have improved and asks Speed if he's okay. The boy, seemingly unprepared for the question, looks a bit confused but responds that he's fine. Kang tells him to keep doing what he's doing and heads back toward the mermaid to continue the fight. Speed Weapon watches in disbelief at Kang's courage and determination to win the battle. This sparks his admiration for heroes as he witnesses a truly heroic act unfold before his eyes. Speed recalls his conversation with Kang, where Kang said that a hero must sacrifice themselves for others. Kang had also mentioned that even in a school that trains heroes, no one seemed to have that potential. At least not in the driving class, which is why Speed recruited Rachel to form this group. After all, Speed would act as the team's support and still have Leon, whom he hoped to see as a hero figure. Kang Geomma had acknowledged this and said Speed had chosen the right path. Speed replied that Kang was far from being a hero, which made Geomma happy since he didn't want to be one. However, back in the present, Speed sees Geomma sacrificing himself for everyone like a true hero. The mermaid uses her magic to summon fish imbued with her electrifying purple energy. The monstrous school of fish charges aggressively toward Kang Geomma. Fueled by the demon mermaid's lightning magic, the fish pursue their target relentlessly. Easily, Kang Geomma dodges, leaping over the lightning and fish, avoiding the attack. Our protagonist remarks that these attacks are far too slow for him, until he realizes that they are homing attacks continuously tracking him. The mermaid lets out another piercing, deafening scream, glaring malevolently at Kang. A cross-shaped cut forms in the wall, and Kang Geomma emerges from it to evade the fish. After breaking through the wall to escape the strikes, Kang charges toward the mermaid. As Geomma sprints forward, the mermaid continues using her guided fish magic to strike him. The monster grins and then screams loudly, unleashing her full power against Kang. Rachel yells at Speed Weapon to do something, and he quickly grabs his flute to use it. At that moment, Speed realizes she was targeting him all along. However, before the magic can reach Speed, our hero appears and slices the mermaid with his knife. He notices once again that the cut is shallow and berates himself internally to deliver stronger strikes. Enraged by the wound, the demon creature retaliates using her arm to attack Kang again. Caught off guard, Kang is struck and sent flying into a wall, crashing into it hard. The impact is so strong that the magic pierces through the cave wall, creating a massive hole. Still furious and growling, the demon mermaid moves toward Geomma. Before she can act, however, she is struck in the face, stunned by the impact. One of the students wonders what is happening in the cave and mentions that instructor Kim went there. The cadet notes hearing the sound of an explosion and seeing a flash in the sky. Suddenly, she notices an unexpected, sudden rain begin to fall from the sky. The instructor tells the injured to move and assumes the loud noise was a thunderclap. With a faint smile, she tells everyone to return to the academy. A massive hole in the cave wall where the magic hit is now clearly visible. Speed continues playing his flute to help his teammates recover. The small, abyssal fish are stunned by the scene they have just witnessed. Rachel notices the fishmen fleeing the cave for some unknown reason. Kang remains standing in the middle of the cave with his friends, ready to continue the fight. Geomma notices that in 40 seconds he hasn't caused any damage as he was too focused on Leon. The mermaid was buried when the cave collapsed due to her own trap, but he imagines she's still alive. As the swordsman considers this, a cave wall explodes and debris flies everywhere. Just as Kang and Geomma expected, this fight will be anything but easy. Kang removes his jacket and prepares to continue the fight with the 10 seconds he has left. Meanwhile, the demonic mermaid charges at him at high speed, extremely enraged. Kang tells Rachel to take care of Weapon and Leon since the smaller fish are already gone. Still in shock from the recent events, Rachel nods and says she'll do it. Weapon can't believe that Geomma is fighting a demon alone. At first he thought Geomma was crazy, but now he realizes he's witnessing a legendary moment. With 10 seconds remaining, Kang says he'll finally focus entirely on the fight. And so the final round of this battle begins with the demon smiling and rushing toward him. Using her water magic, the mermaid accelerates, while Kang prepares with both knives in hand. Kang Geomma closes his eyes to focus and opens them quickly with confidence. Our protagonist, fully concentrated, moves at extreme speed and declares he'll cut everything. Before the fight continues, we see Chloe Auditor running as fast as she can outside. She tells herself to run faster and faster and insists she cannot stop running. Using her energy, she makes powerful leaps to reach her destination more quickly. She feels as if her legs might explode from the pain even while using her blessings to run. Even though it's just a call for help, the pain is overwhelming, but she does it for her dear Geomma. She remembers her beloved asking her to get help from the instructors. Recalling that moment, she affirms that Kang is the strongest person she's ever seen. But Geomma has always been reluctant to fight and avoided battles whenever he could. Kang Geomma only draws his knives when combat is completely unavoidable. Chloe also thought the best thing to do was to follow Kang's requests and leave. If only she were stronger, she claims, she would be here helping the swordsman. While running, Chloe hears the sound of an explosion and is shocked, her eyes widening. Feeling sadness as she imagines the worst might have happened to Geomma, she prays he's alive. Suddenly, mid-run, she nearly trips over a loose branch but manages to leap over it. With that jump and momentum, she avoids falling and keeps her pace steady. She slides but uses the motion to continue running, asserting she cannot stop. Crying desperately, she begins shouting for anyone to hear and help her. Chloe senses several presences right ahead of her. Even with her confused senses, she's aware of them. Noah hears a demonic mermaid with Geomma. She refuses to stop as she must help him. Unexpectedly, she finds Abel von Nibelung standing right in front of her with her sword in hand. With teary eyes, Chloe is shocked and seems to find hope in the blue-haired girl. Abel von Nibelung turns around and is surprised to see Chloe Auditor. Chloe apologizes for her abrupt arrival, but thanks Abel Nibelung for being there. Unable to run any longer, Chloe collapses in front of Abel's group. Everyone is shocked and asks what's going on, even suspecting it might be an ambush. Abel's group tells the girl to wake up, saying they can't ignore her and move on. Abel Nibelung starts thinking and realizes she recognizes Chloe's face from somewhere. Too weak to move, Chloe begs for help and keeps repeating Kang Geomma's name. The 4 members of the blue-haired girl's group stand pensively in front of Chloe's body. Speed wonders if there will ever be another day as surprising as today. He watches the scene like a butcher skillfully handling a live fish on a cutting board. Kang isn't just fighting a demon, he has total control of the battle. The unfolding scene, Speed Weapon believes, is something he'll never forget. After all, Kang isn't merely moving quickly as he did in the subspace duel. Using precise and rapid techniques, he's dodging attacks while closing in on the demon. At the same time, he's brutally slashing the mermaid in all directions and locations. The result is a natural and straightforward outcome of simple and effective cutting actions, leaving the mermaid in pieces. Rachel and Speed are in awe of the fight while simultaneously terrified. Rachel, heir to the family of the Spear Saint, grew up surrounded by strength and had never seen anything like this before. Suddenly, Rachel yells at Weapon to pay attention to something and he turns his head. A massive lightning bolt comes their way and Rachel jumps to protect her ally. Irritated, she tells Speed not to lose focus if he wants to survive, and they notice a large trail of destruction on the ground. Reflecting on the situation, Speed realizes he nearly forgot the surreal scene he's living in, where the enemy uses magic. Magic against a kitchen knife is not an ideal combination, even though Kang is holding his ground. If an unavoidable spell comes, it could be the end for Kang Geomma, who would face significant difficulties. Kang Geomma, still standing resiliently, seems to be starting to tire. Meanwhile, the demon mermaid stands in her menacing pose with a wide, wicked grin. The mermaid raises her arm and casts her Neil Storm spell. As the spell is invoked, the previously normal rain becomes aggressive and pink like her magic. Screaming and consumed by rage, she points her hand at Kang Geomma to strike him. The shower of magic-infused needles begins to rain down toward him, and Kang starts to flee. Running at an incredible speed, he tries to escape the homing magic that chases him. With his knife, he deflects and ricochets the spells into the cave walls. However, he notices one of his knives has been damaged by the mermaid's magic, which shocks him. Despite this, Kang uses his damaged knife to launch another charge and slices the demon in half again. This time, the enemy appears terrified, her eyes turning white and lifeless. Realizing his enemy survived, Kang prepares to deliver another powerful attack. Before Geomma can land the blow, the demon mermaid screams loudly for her life. At that moment, Kang delivers a perfectly surgical horizontal slash. However, something feels wrong. His eyes widen in shock. Before the fatal blow could land, the mermaid summons a monster to take the hit for her. She smirks even more wickedly and, grabbing a pink crystal, places it in her mouth. As she swallows the magic crystal, her body begins to deform. The mermaid's mouth grows enormous, and from it, a massive magic beam begins to form. Speed Weapon shouts for Kang Geomma to dodge the potentially fatal attack. Looking at the pink beam and already exhausted, Kang knows he must evade the strike. Our protagonist, confused, suddenly finds himself in a strange, all-white space. He notices his legs submerged in water, which he scoots into his hands to see if it's real. Hearing a noise, he turns and appears perplexed by what he sees. Suddenly, the horizon lights up with an enormous flash, changing the entire color of the space. Our hero's eyes widen as he recalls the voice saying, "Anything you cut will be severed." Exhausted and bewildered, Kang doesn't understand this place, but his knife materializes in the air. Grabbing it in his hand, he leaps and performs a slicing motion in the air. Kang finds himself back in the cave, now completely destroyed as he delivers the slash. In that instant, he cuts through the fatal magic, canceling the mermaid's attack. With the knife in hand, the rain continues to fall, and the demon mermaid's body lies before Kang. The mermaid, with dry skin and a wounded body, appears on the brink of being defeated. Kang, holding just one knife, looks down at the monster with a dark and somber expression. His empty, apathetic gaze reflects his knowledge of his power, exuding calm and pride. Weak and gasping, the demon mermaid's body succumbs to Geomma's strike. Rachel and Speed Weapon watch the scene, too stunned to react. Kang Geomma delivers one final precise slash, finishing the demon once and for all. The demon mermaid's head rolls and falls into a nearby pit. Speed, speechless, watches the scene with wide eyes, overwhelmed by its intensity. Our hero, observing the demon's demise, declares that they have won and defeated her. Speed is astounded by the fact that a first-year student defeated a demon mermaid alone. The two teammates stare at this legendary and historic scene, unable to respond. But at that moment, Kang Geomma begins coughing and ketchup-like blood spills from his mouth as he falls to his knees. Rachel and Speed rush toward him as he collapses, clutching his stomach. Leon finally manages to stand, and Weapon feels relieved to see him okay. The orange-haired boy starts hearing noises behind him and finds it strange. He wonders if the fish that have fled are now returning. Looking toward the cave entrance, he notices Abel Nibelung and her group arriving. Relieved, Speed says it's great to see more people coming to help. Abel and her group are shocked and ask what kind of creature is lying defeated on the ground. They wonder if it's a mermaid, while also noticing Rachel holding an unconscious Kang. They question why there's a mermaid here and why it's been cut into so many pieces. Rachel embraces the unconscious Kang Geomma and pleads with him to wake up. Nibelung feels uneasy, wondering why they are embracing like that. Abel notices that while the other group members were on the brink of death, the leader tried to appear fine. She finds this false demeanor irritating and says she's already contacted the instructors, who should arrive soon. The blue-haired girl asks what happened here before they arrived. Speed indignantly says the instructors claimed to have inspected the island beforehand, yet the mermaid appeared. Abel Nibelung tells him to stop complaining and explain what happened in the cave. Speed Weapon asks if Abel thinks she's so important that she can give him orders. Irritated, Abel asks why he's always like this and says she spoke politely. He replies that she won't believe him if he explains, but he decides to tell her anyway. After all, storytelling is Speed's specialty, so he recounts everything to Abel. After hearing the full story, Abel asks if Kang really fought a mermaid alone. In a quick and blunt tone, Weapon confirms that's exactly what happened in the cave. Abel Nibelung questions if a first-year student could truly defeat a demon on his own. She thinks the story sounds like a lie, even harder to believe than ancient tales. The stories her grandfather told her as a child were hard to believe, but there was proof. There's no reason for the elders to lie about them, as irrefutable evidence exists. A story that sounds like a legend, Abel remarks that she is a descendant of Aaron Nibelung and Valor Dwaken. It's such an impressive lineage that it marked her as a prodigy from birth. In short, her heroic bloodline defines her, yet she hates bearing this legacy. That's why she trains so tirelessly to surpass her limits and develop her talent. Through her own efforts, she's come so far, yet Kang possesses a strength far greater than hers. The immense difference in their strength causes Abel to feel a mix of fear and respect. Abel Nibelung wonders if she's just an ordinary person compared to him. She asks if anyone can use a healing blessing on Kang Geomma. Even severely injured, Kang Geomma, the same age as her, managed to defeat a demon on his own. She looks at him with a hint of envy for his heroic and legendary feat. Spee asks if Abel has already contacted the academy, and she confirms she has. Weapon says they shouldn't share the details of this incident with the instructors, which puzzles Abel. Speed explains it's because the instructors claim they had already inspected the island, and Abel agrees. He questions why there was a demon in an easily accessible cave where any student could enter. Abel remains silent, observing what Speed has to say about his theory on this incident. Leon asks if Weapon is implying the existence of a demon infiltrator at the academy. Speed replies that it's not a fact, but even so, they can't ignore the possibility. Since this area isn't secret, without Kang, the entire team would have been wiped out by the mermaid. They wonder why this happened, even the 700-year peace treaty. Even though there have been minor conflicts, the demon clan has never gone this far. After all, there are clauses that could trigger a war if they are violated. When Abel starts overthinking, Speed places a hand on her shoulder and brings her back to reality. He says she's thinking too far ahead, and they don't yet know if there's a spy among them. The clues they have are insufficient to draw conclusions about this mermaid incident. Leon says that if they reveal Kang Geomma defeated a monster alone, he could become a target for the spy. Speed agrees but argues that hiding Kang's achievement is also wrong at this moment. Abel Nibelung suggests consulting her grandfather to determine the best course of action. Everyone falls silent and asks if they should really talk about this with the Sword Emperor. Time passes, and we see the Jokum Academy Hospital during sunset. The open window lets in fresh air, and we see Kang Geomma lying on a bed. Upon waking, he notices he's in a hospital bed and raises his hand, stretching his fingers. He feels relieved to realize he's still alive, even though the mermaid's final attack was unavoidable. Kang Geomma had clearly seen the attack and used his knife to cut through the magic. He saw a line to slice along and did so with precision, causing the magic to burst like a water balloon. It was just like the moment when he cut her water magic at the beginning of the fight. Our hero feels something strange and is activating the blessing of the god of the sword earlier. The swordsman activates the system and analyzes the data on his blessing, noticing some changes. His mental level has increased by 1, which he assumes is why he wasn't afraid to fight. Finally, his assimilation rate has also increased, and once it reaches 15%, the next requirement will be met. Kang wonders if this was a consequence of the mermaid's magic being activated at that moment. Media suddenly appears, overly excited, and rushes to hug Kang Geomma. She says she was very worried something bad might happen to him. She also expresses frustration with the instructors who claim to have checked the location beforehand. Shocked, our protagonist asks Media to give him a moment. She quickly apologizes for overreacting and says she'll grab something for him. Kang notices Media has a subspace bag that seems infinite, and she exclaims that she found something. She decides to give Kang Geomma the Murasame as a midterm gift. The fact that he defeated a demon alone on the island appears to remain a secret, as the director promised. Reading the sword's description, Geomma realizes it's a rank B Japanese sword. Media explains that rewards are usually given formally, but it wasn't possible this time. Out of the corner of her eye, the heroine notices someone waiting outside the door. Realizing it's the old man, Media tells him to come into the room and not be shy. Annoyed, the Sword Emperor asks her to stop calling him an old man. She retorts that a 70-year-old acting like a shy child is amusing. Our hero feels a sense of déjà vu and asks what the Sword Emperor is doing here. Media says she heard reports from Geomma's friends, and in the name of the academy, she has made a decision. Both bow their heads and formally apologize to Kang Geomma. She admits that everything that happened during the exam was the fault of Jokum Academy. Because of their oversight, Geomma and his team, as well as almost everyone on the island, were put in mortal danger. Regarding the demon incident, director Media Poison vows to reveal a full truth in her honor. The Sword Emperor states that our heroes save all the cadets on Skopuli Island. Confused and unsure how to react, Kang Geomma says he only did what he could to help. Even though it was an incredible feat, Media thinks it's best to keep it a secret for now. As the academy director, it seems ironic for her to say this, but it appears to be an internal issue. She also apologizes to Kang Geomma for not adequately rewarding him for his achievement. With a faint smile, he says it's okay, and she returns the smile warmly. Media asks him to be honest and wonders why he can't act his age and complain a little. She jokes that he seems like an old man in a young body, and he chuckles at that. The director and the Sword Emperor leave the room with serious expressions, lost in thought. Stopping in the hallway, Media asks Sieg if he remembers anything. Media mentions that when they first met, she told him to get off a bench and he drew his sword. She asks if he said anything about giving orders that day, but he doesn't recall clearly. To Media and Siegfried, it feels like it all happened yesterday, but it's actually been 60 years. Even after all this time, they haven't uncovered even half of Jokum Academy's history, which is strange. Even when they enrolled, the place was already ancient and had a rich, deep history. Despite its ups and downs, Jokum Academy has protected its students for 700 years. With a sorrowful expression and an aura glowing green, Media laments that they failed this time. Overwhelmed by her strong emotions, she accidentally shatters the windows into pieces. Media creates a barrier with her aura to shield them from the shards, her eyes filled with anger. Consumed by rage, the director recalls the events before the midterm exam. They had received a report from 2 instructors about Scopuli Island during a preliminary inspection. Although rare, Scopuli Island is famous for the appearance of mermaids. That is why training was always conducted there with great care to avoid putting anyone at risk. However, even so, this time a mermaid appeared, leaving Medea consumed by sadness. Siegfried places a hand on her shoulder to calm her, and Medea apologizes for getting so carried away. Fearful of Medea's reaction, she changes the subject and begins talking about Kang Geomma. She asks C what he thinks about Kang's feat of defeating the demon alone. He says it's innate talent, as there have been thousands of names exalted as the best of their time, and they disappeared just as quickly, like meteors that shine briefly before fading away. It's a frivolous label used by families obsessed with fame whenever their children show skill. They consider him a genius, even though for Abel, Sieve's granddaughter, that label is forbidden. But if there's someone who truly and genuinely is a genius, it's undoubtedly Kang Geomma. He wonders how far Kang could go if his experience were shaped by his talent. If Kang is that person, perhaps the lifelong dream C has had of a better world could come true. Then the Sword Emperor turns and begins to leave, leaving Medea speechless. Siegfried ends the conversation by saying he will place his trust in Joachim Academy. Medea smiles and asks C for help cleaning up the mess made by the broken glass, but he refuses. Inside the wolf class, we see our hero sitting in his classroom. As difficult as it is for him to admit, the reason his friends are alive is that he defeated the mermaid. The first thing he did after leaving the hospital was to visit the Academy's forge to reinforce Murasame. For our hero, the sword is basically an iron rod that doesn't align with the blessing. That's why Kang Geomma is determined to strengthen his weapon with the Academy's blacksmith. Whelan says that because of the Academy's 700-year event, his services are free of charge. Kang says he's lucky to catch this promotion and hopes the enhancement is a success. Someone in the wolf class shouts Kang Geomma's name from afar. Walking with crutches, Chloe notices that he's out of the hospital and asks if he's okay. Kang asks what happened to his friend, and she says things ended up this way somehow. She says that thanks to Speed's immediate help, she'll be able to walk without crutches in a week. She places her hand on her chest and says that, believe it or not, she's an auditor and strong because of it. Excited, she says she can't wait to walk without crutches again, and Kang is happy to see her happy. He asks what happened while he was away, and she says the elders are arguing with director. Kang assumes that his victory wasn't entirely his own. Even though he defeated the mermaid, everyone did their part. Chloe went to get help, Rachel held off hundreds of enemies, and Speed provided buffs and healing. Praising his team, he wonders what Leon did, as he didn't lead the team during that time. He questions whether this will be enough to defeat the Demon King, and if it happened because he attacked first. The Wolf class instructor arrives, interrupting all conversations, and shouts at the students. He orders everyone to be quiet and sit down as he has an announcement before the morning training. It may seem sudden, but for now, someone will be teaching alongside the instructor. The students find it strange and question whether it will be an assistant teacher. When this assistant teacher appears at the instructor's call, everyone is shocked. Siegfried, the Sword Emperor, enters the wolf class at that moment, entering in formal attire with an imposing posture and austere demeanor. The entire room is stunned. Everyone starts whispering about the fact that the Sword Emperor is in their classroom. Steve looks directly at Kang, who wonders why he's there. Meanwhile, elsewhere, an old hooded man is thrown to the ground, coughing up blood like ketchup. Begging for forgiveness from someone holding his face, he trembles in fear. A Joachim Academy instructor, using magic, slaps the old man across the face. The instructor appears furious with the elder, crotty, as he shakes and pleads for another chance. With magic and demonic eyes, the woman says the commander of the 5th Legion is enraged. As she eats a sweet, she says the elder can't seem to do his job properly. He apologizes for upsetting her, but it's no use. He gets punched in the face again. The woman tells him to try apologizing again if he has the courage. She remarks that it was so difficult for Leon to capture a child on the brink of death. And she says that no matter how incredible a hero candidate might be, he brought a mermaid and still failed the mission. She blames everything on the elders and the Sword Emperor, who had the audacity to establish himself at the academy. The old elder keeps apologizing, injured, while the woman yells at him again. She kicks the elderly man in the face, asking if her orders weren't clear. He becomes enraged that a mere instructor is doing all this and betraying the academy. Wiping her shoe, she expresses disgust that it got dirty with ketchup and says it's amusing. She finds it absurd that a mermaid was defeated by a first-year student. She also comments that this year's new students seem very talented. The elder says this happened simply because one cat eliminated the mermaid. She asks if it was just one and if it was Leon who defeated the demonic creature. The elder says it wasn't him, and the instructor tells him to stop stalling and speak up. Crowdy, the elder, says it was Kang Geomma, the best student of the year. The instructor acknowledges Kang as the special admissions student, but looks down on him with disdain. Holding a mysterious object imbued with magic, she comments that it's interesting. At Joachim Academy, morning training begins and the instructor starts counting. The instructor runs ahead of his students, motivating them to keep running. He continues the count from 1 to 6 as they run around Geomma Academy. Rachel, using her crutch and unable to run, cheers for her beloved while watching his training. Exhausted, Geomma smiles back at his friend, thinking he'd rather be sitting too. Yelling at our protagonist, the instructor tells him his pace is too slow and he must speed up. The Sword Emperor runs alongside Kang and asks if he injured his leg during the test. Geomma wonders why this man is running so fast by his side. Siegfried von Nibelung, the right hand of Valor Joachim, was the first spear saint. After Aaron Nibelung, Sieg inherited the title of Sword Saint, a title that suited him perfectly. He was recognized as humanity's strongest fighter and was Leon's fencing mentor during the Second War. He is a character who clearly stands out starting in the middle of the game's story. Our protagonist then wonders why Siegfried, the Sword Emperor, is here. He would prefer Siegfried bother Leon instead of him. Geomma realizes that the main story, which had veered off course, has now completely changed. Thinking back, he remembers that Leon inherited the title of Sword Saint at the game's end. If Leon is supposed to inherit the title at the end of the game, Sieg's presence here isn't random. In fact, it's quite important, but it's also very awkward. It's as if our hero is running side by side with a delivery man or something similar. Sieg says that endurance is the foundation of any fighter, as a hero is useless without the strength to sustain it. This basic training routine serves as the foundation for each student's future development. Siegfried tells Geomma to stop being lazy and keep running. He tries to push Kang to give his all, extracting the most energy and motivation from his strongest student. With a proud expression, the Sword Emperor tells Kang he's doing well and orders him to continue. Geomma tries to run faster to catch up to Siegfried and impress him. Our hero thinks that the older Siegfried gets, the younger he seems. From now on, except during training, the use of personal weapons is strictly prohibited. A chest of weapons is dumped onto the ground, its contents spilling out forcefully. The students are confused and Sieg tells them to choose a weapon and become specialists in it. Our hero notices that even a sashimi knife is among the weapons, while some students complain about the measure. One student tells the Sword Emperor it would be better to become familiar with their inherited weapons. He questions Sieg's decision to ban weapons, to which Sieg replies that fundamentals are crucial for the future. After all, the more someone relies on a high-level weapon, the lazier they become in training. In the end, they come to believe their true strength lies in their weapon. Another student asks if it isn't important to learn to use their weapon to understand its weaknesses. Siegfried replies that no matter how good a weapon is, it's useless if the user lacks skill. And obviously, a true master would never blame their weapon for their mistakes. Geomma is deeply impacted by the Sword Emperor's words. Even so, he fully agrees with what his instructor is saying. Sieg continues, saying that if you master the fundamentals, the weapon naturally becomes part of you. Students who can use common weapons had a higher chance of being added to the end-of-year promotion list. Cadets rush desperately to choose their weapons and make it onto the list. Our hero thought Sieg was just a nerd hiding under Media's wings. Looking at the weapon arsenal, Geomma notices a sashimi knife and had already expected it. When the protagonist grabs the knife, Siegfried looks at him, and Kang assumes he's incredible. The Sword Emperor says that to get familiar with their new weapons, they will fight each other. The students question if it won't be dangerous to spar outside the subspace. Sieg says they join the academy to become worthy fighters. Fighters only grow by training as if they are in real combat, to face real risks. However, if they just swing their swords at each other aimlessly, they'll be eliminated in no time. That's why, before starting the duels, he will personally demonstrate how sparring combat works. The students become eager to see the Sword Emperor's technique, but the instructor orders silence. Lee Wobin says that, as an instructor at the best academy in the world, he feels a deep personal crisis. Not just in his career, but in his entire life, as sparring with Siegfried feels like the end of it. Lee Wobin apologizes to his hand in advance. Wobin kindly asks the Sword Emperor to go easy on him, but surprising everyone, Siegfried calls on a specific cadet for sparring. He calls Geomma to step forward and demonstrate this training duel. Everyone is shocked and excited to see the Sword Emperor fight in person. However, they look at our protagonist with disdain as they've never heard of him before. Irritated, our hero notices all the things they're saying about him. The Sword Emperor asks if young Geomma's bones have healed. Stammering, Kang says he's well enough to train, and the Emperor tells the cadet to pick up his sword. Kang thinks that even though it's just training, this feels wrong, but his body is in excellent condition. However, his opponent is the Sword Emperor Siegfried, and this seems extremely unfair. If he crosses swords with the Emperor, it certainly won't end well for him. At the very least, one of them could lose an arm, and with worse luck, a head. He wonders if this instinct for unrestrained combat is an influence of his blessing. Geomma thinks this has gone too far, considering the consequences it might bring him. So he says he's not up to Siegfried's level, and asks him to put away his sword. All the Geomma Academy students start mocking Geomma's attitude. He responds with a cold stare directed at the Sword Emperor.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.